Monday, 4 p.m., Dan Warren and the UFO Garage Podcast. Wednesday, 4 p.m., Sean Raish is Citizen Witness. And on Friday, 3 p.m., Kent Bai versus Mick West. This week on the Singularity Lab, Tuesday, 4 p.m., UFOs and the Paranormal with John Russell. Thursday, 4 p.m., Cyber Warfare, USA versus China. And on Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Paradigm Shifts with Christina Gomez. Come aboard, let's get weird, this week on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Well, hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Singularity Lab, your one-stop shop for reliable news and commentary on breaking stories in science, technology, futurism, and UAP discoveries. I am your co-host, Luis Jimenez. Joining me in a couple of minutes will be Kristen and Michael Mataluni, hosts of the show. And we will be joined today by a really fun guest. I think you guys are going to get a real kick out of this one. It is cybersecurity specialist Nick P. We can't tell you his last name, but yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. Now, we had a conversation with Nick behind the scenes for about an hour, I'd say, and he scared the hell out of us. We are terrified now of doing anything on the computer. And I see him backstage. Oh my God. Okay. We're just going to get a quick peek. Hold on. There's Nick P. How you doing? All right. That's just a sneak peek. It's just a sneak peek of what we're going to be doing today, you guys. So welcome to the 22 of you in here. Let's like, subscribe, share. Let's try and get as many people in here as possible. I'm telling you, this is going to be a very, very interesting conversation. XUAP, what's happening? Just sent me a great email, a couple emails that actually I could touch on now. You know, this idea that Neil deGrasse Tyson keeps coming out and, you know, saying, you know, mocking things as if, you know, people are talking about aliens within this report. And it's just not accurate. Nobody ever mentioned aliens. It's not mentioned in the report. It's not a talking point that other people are using. So it's one of these things that people keep throwing out. I also noticed Mick West does it quite a bit too. He always refers to that everybody who doesn't believe what his way of thinking or his hypotheses on what these are automatically thinks it's aliens. And it's just a really unfair thing to just throw on people who are trying to intelligently talk about the phenomenon. So I thought that was a cool point. Excuse me. I see we got Aaron Desario. Aaron Desario, shout out to Aaron Desario. Man, I mentioned in passing in a Twitter response to somebody about how the New York Times blocks articles. Michael, you know what Aaron Desario did? He bought me a New York Times subscription for a year. Sent it. I was like, dude, you are the fucking man. You are so cool, dude. Like I hope I get half of the money out of it that you put into it. I pretty much am only going to look at the New York Times when they drop a big UFO article, but at least now I got access to it. So, dude, I really appreciate that. You're a sweet, sweet man. Michael, did you go through all of these comments? Oh, okay. I see you're doing it now. Christopher Chevalier here. I have so enjoyed these shows. I stumbled upon them 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I'm hooked. Well, we are happy you're here, Christopher. So happy that you found the Singularity Lab. Don't forget to subscribe, like the channel, share the channel, tell everybody we're live now. And remember, we also do, between the Singularity Lab and the Unidentified Celebrity Review, we do 5 shows a week, Monday through Friday. So make sure you subscribe and make sure you ring the bell because I know Michael is experimenting with dropping new and exciting interviews that he runs solo by himself now, in addition to doing the shows with me. So, like, for example, he had Avi Loeb on yesterday, and it was awesome. We got such a cool viral moment out of it. I wonder... I was going to say I could play it, but I didn't upload that video. But anyway, we could maybe watch it later in the show. I don't know. If you guys want to see it, ask for it in the chat and we'll play it. But it was a really cool moments where Avi Loeb addressed Neil deGrasse Tyson's tweets that he's been sending out the last 2 or 3 days. So here we go. Michael pulled it up real quick. Excellent. So this is the Avi Loeb clip. I edited this. So shout out to me. But here
Possibility. I just don't understand, and I don't mean to shit on Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I just don't understand this idea because he tweeted out the other day. Could you imagine why another civilization would give a crap about us? And I don't understand that way of thinking because, if you're a scientist and you're getting off planet Earth and you're going out into the universe to explore, it doesn't any form of life attract you? Isn't that why we're going to Mars? Isn't that why we're expanding our reaches around our own solar system? Because we're interested in potential other life forms. We are potential other life forms. Why would they be interested in us?
Well, they will not be interested in his tweet.
Makes us move. Oh! Boom!
That I can guarantee. Boom! Because if they care about intelligent species, this is not an intelligent tweet.
You just got dunked on, bro.
If we want to gain their attention, we should behave intelligently. I mean, we can behave non-intelligently like we had over human history. And the way I was asked, how do you define an intelligent culture? The way I define it is a culture or a species that follows the guiding principles of science, which are sharing evidence-based knowledge. Now, what Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing is not sharing evidence-based knowledge. He may argue that that's his opinion, but opinions do not matter in this business. You need to collect evidence. Now, if you are not aiming to collect the evidence because you have a prejudice, because you have a notion of, you are just playing lazy. You are saying, I don't need to get the evidence. It's just like the philosophers during the days of Galileo. I don't need to look through the telescope.
Yep, he sure did. All right, you guys, let's get this show started. Everybody's warmed up. So happy you're here. We'll see you in a second.
And we are all live together, as all three of us live now. Hello. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Lou. How you guys doing?
Good.
Alive. We are all alive, especially after watching Avi Loeb take the entire glass out of the backboard on Neil deGrasse Tyson. That was a brutal moment. And I can't say, I'm not going to say, I actually was chatting with Avi today and we were emailing back and forth and he doubled down. I'm not going to say yeah, you saw it, Lou.
I saw some of that exchange.
Savage.
Yeah,
savage.
Check this out. That's pretty savage.
Hey, Christopher Chevalier.
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 A horseman, a person who rides a horse.
Oh, a chevalier.
Mm.
That's excellent.
Like a Chevrolet. That's what the Americans do to things like this. They bastardize them. Chevalier.
We bastard. Shall we go to Ponce de Leon? It's Ponce de Leon.
Oh, no. My daughter's favorite is Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Bitches. I love it.
We have got an amazing show for you guys today. In the first hour, we're going to be bringing you Nick P, the last nameless Nick P. Oh, look at this guy. Look at Nick. Nick. Is it wrong to super chat my own stream? Glad to be here. Nick in the house. Nick has been a supporter of this show for quite a while. I was going to introduce him.
Oh, I thought this is what we were just doing. Okay, you know what?
No, take him out of here. Take him out. Take him out. Take him out. Take him out.
All right. Sorry. Let's rewind. Okay.
For the first hour, we've got the amazing Nick P, cyber warfare and the global powers in the information age. And in the second hour, we're going to be joined by Aaron Desario and Jazz Shaw to break down our conversation and to dig into some more breaking news. But right now, for the main event,
look what happened.
What happened?
Nick P just sent us a $50 donation.
Oh my God, Nick! Amazing.
It says, is it wrong
not-
to super chat my own stream? Glad to be here. Excellent.
Is that part of crossing the streams? Is that?
I think so. I think Nick has crossed the streams. So without further ado, Nick is an experienced cyber professional with a demonstrated history of the subject matter expertise. He's in enterprise cybersecurity, digital forensics, and incident response. Strong experience in enterprise hybrid cloud security, technical consulting for executive audiences and corporate investigations. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Nick motherfucker B. What's up, bro?
How are you guys? How you guys doing?
Is there an acronym for that?
DFIR?
Oh.
Digital Forensics and Incident Response. Yeah, I have extensive experience in digital forensics and incident response consulting. So that's the short way of saying it. But,
so while we're at it, why don't you break down exactly what that means?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could start off a little bit background about myself and my professional experience, if that works better.
That'd be great. Yeah.
So I've been involved in cybersecurity since 2006, 2007. I was around 11 or 12 years old at the time when I first was introduced to cybersecurity, or it's how security applies to technology in general. So
Right.
I had been watching a lot of YouTube videos. YouTube was in its fledgling state at the time. So you had a lot of, like real fringe, like hacking videos and things like that. But there were a few good tutorials at the time. So my parents at the time were getting rid of an old laptop, an old Dell, real old. I think it only had like 500 megabytes of RAM, right? So like it was very old, like dual core, like the Dell Gateway model.
Right.
So they were going to toss it, and I hijacked that, and I basically I was watching a lot of tutorials at the time about something called Backtrack Linux.
Okay.
Backtrack Linux is like the granddaddy of what today is called Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a version of Linux. It's another operating system, just like Windows. That's all Linux is. But it comes pre-configured with a lot of hacking tools, right? So like open source tools that people create, it's public on the internet for free. You don't have to pay licensing fees, and you can do hacking shit with it, right? Like famous open source hacking tool is called Metasploit. It's a hacking framework. So that means it's one tool, you install it, you run it, typically on Linux, but you can install it on Windows in some other ways. There's workarounds, right? And basically, it comes pre-configured with a bunch of hacking tools. You could do a bunch of different stuff with it. You could do phishing with it.
So you were 11 years old at the time when you got this. Okay.
It's scaring me that it's far too late for our son.
How old is your son?
He's 17.
Oh,
He's
there's
17.
still time. There's always time. I'm telling you. You go down like that. That's the cool thing about InfoSec is like you go down a few YouTube rabbit holes. You really like that. That's the cool thing. You don't need that college education, right? It's like you want to become a penetration tester, which is basically a paid hacker nowadays. Like you take some time, you go through YouTube, you learn what you like, you learn how different tools work, you learn how networks work, you learn how computers work, you learn how enterprise systems work. It's all open now. Like that's the glory about the internet, right? Like all that information's out there.
So you've got these tools. You're 11 years old. So tell me what you were hacking when you were 11.
So after spending probably way too much time learning about different programming languages like Ruby, yes, penetration master, Jack Ryan. So back then, I tried to be a penetration master, if you will. So like I thought that it was the coolest thing. There was all this stuff coming out around the time, and we'll get into the history of it. But like there was hacktivism, there was different groups like that coming out. There was a lot of stories, target hack, big things like that, right? So like I thought it was the coolest stuff. I could interface with all these different computers. This is the coolest thing. So I started off with what's called man-in-the-middle attacks. So that's basically imagine your Wi-Fi. Let's focus on your real life, right? Let's say you're at your home. You have your Comcast router, right? And it's also a wireless access point. It's your local network. And this is 2006, 2007. We didn't have secure networking protocols like HTTPS, which is an encrypted way of sending data over the internet in a user visible format, right? That's how most modern websites work nowadays. It's a secured version. Let's put quotes on that, right? It's encrypted. So basically someone can't just like read the data of what you were doing on the website. So back then that stuff didn't exist. It was the Wild West, if you will. So basically, you could install some open source tools on a laptop, an old Dell Gateway, and with a little bit of YouTube knowledge and some reading of some documentation and man pages on command line, how to intercept network traffic, and all of a sudden start doing things like replacing images on everyone on the network's computers. So I thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, all right, let's do it. So start. Right? I have an older, I have an older brother. He's 4 years older than me. Yes, please smash and subscribe to the like button. Thank you, Rusty Pack. So I thought it was the coolest thing. So I was like messing with my brother. I was like fucking with them, like replacing all the web pages of his browser. And this is like, we have old, like, these are like desktop computers, the big like cathode ray tube monitors, right? Like, but I was messing with him. It was like MySpace days. So like all of his MySpace pictures I replaced with like memes or like back in memes, like funny pictures and stuff. And then I thought, all right, this is awesome. What else can we do? And then I'm, around the same time I was entering high school, smartphones were just becoming a thing. I was back on the. I wish that we go back to these type of devices. We used to have devices like this. This is a note, right? We used to have devices like this called like the iPod Touch. If you guys remember that, right? It was basically a wirelessly connected device, not like a tablet where it took two hands, but basically we could interface with all these apps and everything. But we didn't have the 5G connectivity. I really like the idea of that because cell towers and all that. Who needs that? Let's go Wi-Fi. Let's go internet, right? So back then we had much smaller devices, a lot less capabilities, and smaller, like bigger distance between microprocessors on the board, less RAM, yada yada, right? So this was I think I got for a Christmas present the first iPod Touch, and I think I had just graduated from having a Razor, the Razor cell phone. If you remember that, rolling with the kick and all the sidekick and all those cool things. Motorola. Yep. So I had just gotten the first Samsung, I think it was the S3, the Galaxy S3. It might have been the Galaxy S1. I don't recall. But so I thought, all right, let's go hacking mobile, like mobile edition, right? So a lot of open source information about the time about it was called, for iPhones, you jailbroke your iPhone, you jailbroke your iOS device. So the iPod Touch was running iOS. The Android device was running Android flavor, whatever. That's a lot easier. And that was called rooting, ROOT. So what that means is, in terms of jailbreaking in iOS and Android and mobile devices, right? Distinct from your desktop operating systems like Windows, Mac OS X, right? And Linux, Ubuntu, Debian, all your other flavors. With the mobile scene, from the operating system perspective, they tend to put restrictions on what you can do, what type of access you could have to data, because mobile devices came out after Windows and other things like that, like Linux, where they had the foresight of, all right, these were some security issues in those types of operating systems. We're going to do things differently. we're going to have apps and these distinct packages of code
Right.
that run instead of your software and your crazy, file systems that you get into with Linux and Windows. So to get around that in the hacking scene, they developed things that would basically give you God-level access to mobile operating systems. So that was rooting for Android, and that was jailbreaking for iOS.
Okay.
So I thought that was the coolest thing, and that let you do things like install custom apps that people on the internet made, and they could do crazy things like hacking suites and like literal apps that let you hack. So I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I got into that scene, and this was I was like a sophomore through senior in high school. So it got to the point where you could do things like from your smart device, if you're connected to a Wi-Fi network, and back then the Wi-Fi standards were very insecure.
Right.
So we have the Wi-Fi standards today, like WPA2 or certificate-based authentication, all this crazy stuff, and mesh Wi-Fi and all that. It's much more secure than back then. Back then, it was like, the password to this Wi-Fi network, you own the network. Like, you could be the network. You could pretend to be that wireless like Wi-Fi node on the ceiling and intercept all the traffic and decrypt it and like get access to everything. It was crazy back then.
That's funny, man, because back in my day, it was how to get a free phone call through the payphone. It was as simple as
fracking. It's called fracking.
Fracking, where you just literally recorded tones on a tape recorder. And you just play it through the receiver, and it's like, okay, make your long distance phone call. You're like, sweet.
Yeah. Some of the some of the
way more complicated.
We'll get into the history of it, but the giants of industry today. So there's a company that has a monopoly, if you will, on the user education, cybersecurity education, and phishing training market, if you will, of corporate America. It's called KnowBe4. And that was created by and founded by a person called Kevin Mitnick. He was an OG hacker back in the 80s, and he was like in fracking and stuff like that. So he would record, like, I'm not sure if he was the one who did it, but like around that time, people found that in a cereal box that went out, there was a toy that was a slide whistle. And if you played it at a certain tone into the phone, you would actually get to like the admin's portion of the phone system. You get free calls. So like that.
And that was a big deal. It took a long time for people to figure it out, because people would be making because back in the day, it was literally the next county over could have been a long distance phone call depending on where the phone is getting routed from. Yeah. And so people figured out you could just take this little slide whistle toy. It was a Captain Crunch whistle, dude. It was so funny. And you just whoop and boom, free long distance phone calls anywhere you wanted to go.
I had no idea.
I saw a whole like presentation this guy did at like a Games Con on how fracking started, and like it was awesome.
Yeah, all we did when we were at the pool in the summer was, you call collect and mom pick me up at the pool. Like that's your first thing. Yeah.
I did that too. Yeah, I did that too.
Yep. Yeah. So it when I was first getting into the security scene, and then as I progressed, it was a little bit more, just because I'm younger, right? Like it just, that's where we started off at. That was the current state of open source knowledge.
And this is what year? What year-ish? What year? Where are we at right now? What year-ish?
So this was through up until 2013.
Up until 2013. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, 2013. I graduated.
Okay.
So I when I was growing up, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an astronomer. I wanted to be a marine biologist. But I always had this passion and this hobby of doing this computer hacking stuff. So I was like, I never knew at the time. And back then, it really in the industry wasn't common knowledge. Like, this is a career, right? Like the stuff I was doing when I was 11, like people get paid 6 figures today
Right.
corporate networks, right? Like no one knew that back then, right?
To be a master penetrator.
Yeah, or penetration tester, right? Like
penetration master.
yeah.
Yes.
And like that's what my roommate does. He is a penetration or an offensive consultant for companies, and like he literally gets paid to hack companies day in and day out,
Wow.
right?
I would love to see that on a hat.
There's tons of badges, hats.
It's a white hat.
It's a
White hat. Terrible, Kristen. Terrible.
There's all different. No, there's plenty of different colored hats.
Love
There are, and that lasted up until 2013, and then it was let's graduate in life and let's go to college. Originally, I when I was at my senior year, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I swam competitively for 16 years. I was like half fish. I thought that serving in national security was it was my calling, and I didn't know how it would be, and just like in terms of national defense, that's what I wanted to be. And in the back of my head, I always had this calling to technology, but I didn't really know how to apply it. So I went through the Naval Academy application process, worked with some really good resources internally at my high school who had gone to the Naval Academy, got all the way up through the application process and everything. That wasn't a problem. Grades weren't a problem. I was in AP classes, but it came down to the congressional nomination process. So all of the service academies, the Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, etc., Army, they require that you get a recommendation for joining the academy from a congressman or a senator. So I went through the interview process, all of that. Unfortunately, I didn't get it. So basically, I had done some research. My parents really helped me out with the research of local colleges that were, really versed in cybersecurity. So around the time of 2013, you had the National Security Agency, newly disclosed, basically giving their accreditations for cybersecurity centers of academic excellence to colleges. So these were basically research institutes, colleges in the United States that basically the NSA said, we give them our thumbs up that they know what they're talking about, right?
Okay.
So I grew up in New Jersey, born and raised, family in the 5 boroughs, etc.
I couldn't tell with the accent. It's totally
See, I don't think I have an accent. That's the funny thing.
Oh yes, you do.
I thought I could have sworn I saw you in that new Saints of Newark trailer. Counting money in there somewhere.
It was in Goodfellas. I was an extra walking in the background.
Yeah.
So basically, in New Jersey, we have a school called Stevens Institute of Technology. It's located in Hoboken, New Jersey, right on the waterfront of the Hudson. Beautiful location. Really good school. They're typically known as an engineering school. So historically, if you look over time, they did a lot of work with the Navy in the World Wars and stuff like that, with the testing of the fluid dynamics of different hull designs. They actually have this giant tank. It literally runs like 2 blocks long, and it's a dunk tank, we call it. It's literally an actual tank full of water, and they have a mechanical pull design where they pull these scale model replicas of hulls, different hull designs and patterns and materials, whatever. And they have contracts and stuff like that, R&D contracts, and they do a lot of fluid dynamic work, right? So Stevens really, really known for engineering, but they're also in the past 10 years known for computer science and cybersecurity.
Okay.
Cybersecurity is a subset of computer science in their curriculum. So, and on top of that, I went through a lot of prerequisites in terms of engineering work. So calculus up to differential equations, physics, traditional Newtonian mechanics through electricity and magnetism. Did some lab work as well. Always was interested in college level physics, things like quantum mechanics. Also had that passion for space as well. So always kept up with that type of information. Ended up doing a research project as my senior thesis, if you will, where our school, since we were an accredited center of cybersecurity, excellence, we were eligible for something called the Ensure program. The Ensure program is a way to pair national research laboratories who have questions with these centers of cybersecurity excellence to give people like my position the opportunity to do some cutting edge R&D on a wide range of topics. This is all, and again, everything that I'm going to talk about is public information. Nothing is going to be specific to jobs that I worked or NDAs or anything like that, right? So through the Ensure project, they were looking for, research projects and things like quantum proof encryption algorithms. So with the, so like that was some of the options, and like some of the labs were looking for research projects. That it was open. You literally had you had a couple thousand of funding, and you basically had a team of like 3 to 5 people, and you just go a whole year into whatever you want, right?
Okay.
I had to take, as part of my curriculum, courses such as discrete algorithms for cryptographic applications, which is the discrete mathematics behind encryption, like RSA and different modern encryption algorithms that we use to secure our communications in transit over the internet. So I hated that. That was bad. That was bad course. I'm more of an application person where I want to see how things work and interfaces with us and how we can fix it at that level, rather than the hardcore R&D math of it. So there was other research projects, and what we landed on in my group was it was called IoT mobility forensics. So IoT is Internet of Things, and we can think of that as our smart devices that aren't a phone and they aren't a computer, right? So what I mean by that is your smart watches, your smart washers, your smart dishwashers, your Amazons. I'm not going to trigger them. I apologize. I don't apologize. I'm not going to say the word.
Your upper class refrigerator.
Your upper class refrigerator, right? Correct.
The Googles, the Amazons, the smart devices, the Echoes, the Alexas, things like that, right?
What about the watches?
The A word.
Yeah. So things like that, right? Your smart locks, your smart thermostats, things like that, right? So what our goal was with that research project was basically diving into, at a base level, let's pick a few different ones, consumer grade, that's out there in the world today on a wide scale, because these devices are out there in the billions now, right?
Right.
I don't have the exact numbers, but this is very easy to find information. If you Google how many IoT devices are out there, it's in the billions, and it's just going up and up and up, right? And as the rise of 5G and these higher bandwidth networks rise, like it's just going to go up, right? So our goal was basically pick a few of these devices and find out what information you can. And this was sponsored by this project was not through a research lab. This was sponsored by a 3-letter agency. I'll leave it at that. So basically what we did was we picked a few devices. One was a smart hub, your Googles, your Amazons, one of those. One was a smart lock that you can, for your front door. One was a smart thermostat, right? And I think that was it. There might have been one more. I think that was it. Oh, no, smart light bulbs. It was a smart light bulb set, which was 2 light bulbs and a smart hub that connects to it, right?
Nick, so blink once if it was the NSA.
Blink twice if it was the DOE. He's not gonna do it. He's not gonna close his eyes. He's not gonna blink for the rest.
No, I knew you wouldn't answer that question. I just wanted to have fun with it.
So basically what we did was we hit it from all angles. We looked at the software. We looked at the apps that they were paired with, right? We looked at the Bluetooth protocols they were running. We looked at the quantity of data that they transmit. It's encrypted. Right. We're not trying to break encryption here. We just want to know, like, what can we tell? So basically we came up to 2 basic deductions from that 3. So number 1, at the app level, we discovered that consumer grade apps do not go through a sufficient security process when they develop their code. And what I mean by that was we were able to pull out the hash, which a hash is, it's an encryption algorithm, right? But it's one way. Encryption can go one way or it can go two ways. So I can take my password, I can encrypt it with a password, and then make it something, right? A blob of data, but it's unique, right? It's unique to that algorithm applied to that password.
Right.
So, but it's one way. I can't decrypt that, let's say. That's called a hash algorithm. So it's one way. So I can take a piece of data and turn it into something else, but I can't reverse it.
Okay.
Then there is encryption as we know it, which is I take that piece of data, I turn it into that other thing. But if I apply that piece of data again in the reverse, I could turn it back into the original contents.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Got it.
Sounds like the plot of a Christopher Nolan movie. But I'm with you.
Oh, it gets funky like that in some circumstances. So,
Yeah.
All right, so
what we
just real quick,
found-
just real quick before you tell me exactly what you found, I want you to tell us what you found. But real quick, I just wanted to reset the room quickly. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We've got Nick P here with us. He's an experienced cyber professional and has demonstrated a history with subject matter expertise with enterprise cybersecurity, digital forensics, and incident response. And he's not going to give you any of the specifics of who he worked for or what he's done, but he's going to help us understand not only what this world of the Internet of Things is, but in addition, what is going on around the world and how we're always experiencing some hack or another and what's going on both the macro and the micro level. So we're going to hit that up in just a second. Make sure if you're just getting here, you subscribe, like, and share so we can get this out to more folks. And then tomorrow on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Lou, we've got Mick West.
We've got Mick West, yeah. Versus.
And
not versus, but it's gonna be Mick West.
it's
and
versus.
Kent Bai.
It's versus. It's
And
versus.
Kent Bai. Yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting discussion, and possibly Stephen Greenstreet in the second hour. He's been pretty fiery the last couple of days, and I just want to talk to him. And I also want to give, I think, a little perspective on sort of where Stephen Greenstreet might be coming from. I have a feeling I know why he's this upset, but we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right, so let's turn it back over to MP. So tell us
Let's do it
right.
real quick, but before you do,
Okay.
Everybody
Resetting
keeps
that.
asking about your cat.
Oh,
Your
she's
cat.
out cold.
oh,
That's Oliver.
Oliver.
Oliver,
Sorry, you had one other
if
thing, Lou?
it's the FBI.
No, they're across the river. Actually.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's not the FBI. All right, cross that one off
All
the
right,
list,
so
guys.
to set the room, so basically, to set the scene, this is taking place in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 2017, 2018. So this is when I'm in college. I'm a senior. I took a 5-year path through the cybersecurity program for my undergrad. This is undergraduate research with a private government-funded program called the Ensure Project. We're trying to answer what can we tell about information of things devices like your
Right.
Amazons, your Googles, your smart devices, right? In terms of intelligence gathering. At the end of the day, that's literally what we want to know, right?
So were you looking for holes in systems, or were you just looking to see what
Anything.
data you could grab?
Anything.
Okay.
Anything.
All right.
In terms of these
Got it.
devices, right? So we found that there was 4 main categories of holes or information gathering techniques that we could find, right? The first
Okay.
one was that the apps that you pair with your smart devices, like your Androids or your iOSs, right?
Sure.
We found that they weren't coded in a secure way. So we were basically able, and I was mentioning before that the reset, that we basically found a hashed password, which is a one-way encryption algorithm of a password. So we can't reverse the password directly, but we can guess what it was and see if we get any hits. So we were able to do that.
Mhm.
And it turns out that password was for like the administrative, like for this smart device, their IT people were using this password to manage the system. So basically, we guessed it, and the way we did that was we run a program called Hashcat.
1, 2, 3, 4.
it was significant and it was complex. No, I will give them that, but that we run into that issue all the time.
Right.
People use bad passwords. They use admin. They use company name. They use XYZ, right?
Name of the company 197, right?
We'll get into that with some historical hacks, significant historical hacks, but so basically we did that, right? And we found out that, all right, we are the admins now. So like we can see every customer's information, right? So that was issue 1. Issue 2 was if you had 0, all right, so let's take a look at Bluetooth first. So a lot of these devices pair with other devices like these phones with Bluetooth. Everyone's familiar with the Bluetooth headphones, right? So Bluetooth is just like, imagine Wi-Fi, but something else, right? It's a remote way to connect devices. And we use it to pair our smart devices. And typically there's a second step process, like you have to enter a code or verify that you want to, right? That's one way to properly secure Bluetooth, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to. You could just put 0 authentication on your Bluetooth. Yeah. And it gets even worse when you talk about these smart devices, because the people who develop these smart devices, they choose to take the easiest way out. So they'll take the standard Bluetooth protocol right up as it's professionally written, and they'll go, well, we don't need that, we don't need that, we don't need this, we don't need that, we don't need this. All right, we have this basic subset of functionality that just works. It just works. We don't ask questions about how it works. It just works.
Right.
So we found that there were issues with some of our smart devices where that's the way it was developed. So I could take a custom application on my phone that is meant to hack Bluetooth devices with poor security, like which is Bluetooth Low Energy Hacking Tool, which is an open source free tool on GitHub. You can download it. Bleh.
Yeah, that's the name of the program.
That's the acronym. What's it called again?
BLEH. So this is a few years old. So but here's the thing.
Yeah.
People don't fix these issues when they occur, right? Like that's the common theme with security. We don't learn our lessons from the past.
Right.
We don't. And it's cheaper and more profitable to make insecure systems than not. So in terms of Bluetooth, people make these smart devices, they rush them out to market every single day faster than the next guy, right? So we found that there was a lot of issues with Bluetooth authentication. We could basically pop a smart lock with an app on a phone. Like I could just walk up to your home and click 3 buttons and get access to your home.
Because you could get into their Bluetooth?
Yes, because that device talks over Bluetooth. That's how it's used to communicate to the intended owner. But we found out that there's no authentication around that. Wow. So we just said, all right, we're going to pretend to be that person and just tell the lock. We were telling the lock to open itself on the Bluetooth level. That's what we were doing.
Wow.
So there was stuff like that. Then the next bucket was I believe there's only one more bucket. This was we were not decrypting traffic. So we were taking a look at how these devices talk on the network. So we took a lot of time. We took like 2 weeks with one device where that was the only thing on the network. This is the only thing plugged into the internet in this area, right? To the ISP level.
Right.
What is it doing? What is it doing? Why is it doing it? Who is it talking to? Where? Then we would do, all right, that device and one other device. Do the same thing. We already have a baseline of every device talking by itself. Now we're going to see, all right, one by one, let's just add them all to the same network, but do they talk to each other? We built that up, and then we started to do things like with these smart hubs, you could do things like, hey, blah, 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 turn my living room lights on. How does that work on the back end? Those devices start talking to each other. That's how it works. When you pair your devices like that, they start talking to each other, right?
Right.
So we do all the analysis. We collect the packet captures of all these things talking over weeks and weeks. We developed automated systems. We ran iPhone emulators, Android emulators to fake being like, oh, if I was to be at the smart lock on my phone and I'm going to click the button to unlock, I'm not doing that for a week straight. So we put an emulator up. We ran auto hotkeys and things like that, programs to simulate clicks. So we basically simulated a person sitting there for a week straight, clicking the button every 30 seconds.
Well. So basically, you have the ability, because all these things they're rushing them out to market. They're not ensuring that the security is up to date, and they're basically allowing anyone to really come in and hack your entire smart home.
We have air purifiers that connect to an app. Your indoor garden connects to
everything.
an app.
Everything does now.
Yeah, we're not even getting to the cyber warfare state yet. We're just talking about the current state, right? And this is just some research that I did. So there's stuff like that. There's stuff where basically the next bucket was, if you just measure the quantity of data of these things talking to each other, you can deduce by measuring those patterns over time statistically in terms of numbers, right? Like, how big were the bytes of traffic at any given point, and map that over time in something like Nmap or something like that, right? You basically tell when someone was saying, hey, blah, 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 what is the traffic today? Hey, blah, 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 when is the weather? And you could also tell things like on a schedule when your lights are set to turn on and off and things like that. So you could deduce from an intelligence standpoint, this target is not going to be home through the hours of X and Y, or they're going to be sleeping through this point and this point, or this is when they go to work and this is when they exit the traffic every single day. You could just measure the quantity of encrypted data and figure that stuff out. So that's the type of research work we did.
Nick, cross your arms if it was the NRO.
Update your homeowner's insurance, everybody, and probably get a dog.
Yes.
Yeah. So
they can't hack dogs yet, right?
You can't hack dogs yet, unless of course you got a smart collar.
She's a rescue, and she has a Bluetooth chip in her.
That's
registered to original owner. So I've rubbed magnets against her, try to wipe that out, but I'm not sure if it's worked. I don't have a scanner to confirm.
Oh wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so that's like that was like the 2013 era, and then up until this point, I always wanted to work for this company. They were called Strauss Freeburg. Again, none of my opinions or views or anything I'm going to say today is related to them. I always wanted to work for them from early college days. If you take a look through, just Google search that company, they were publicly referenced as being the designated company to call in terms of major incidents, or just investigations in terms of technology. If you look at there was an incident with Google where Google Earth, if you go on Google Earth, you could drop down on Street View, right? And it's a truck that drives by with all these crazy cameras and stuff, right?
Right.
So there was allegations that they were collecting data, a lot of data from Wi-Fi and people's passwords and stuff as they were driving by. So that's called war driving in the hacking scene. That's an actual hacking term where you just collect as much data as you can. So there was allegations, and there's lawsuits that Google was doing that. Strauss Freeburg was the expert digital forensics and incident response company brought in to consult on that and do the investigation work and provide evidence and in a court of law. And all the investigations that they've done in the public record have been brought up in a court of law. That's what they do. So I always wanted to work for them. I thought that was the coolest thing. They were also brought on to assist Facebook in the application developer investigation, where Facebook's API was insecure, and anyone who made a third-party app through Facebook was able to query data about all users' information, very, very, very sensitive, detailed information. You can take a look at Facebook's blog for security developer investigations to find more information on that. That's all public information.
Okay.
So I really wanted to work for this company. Unfortunately, I didn't get through the initial interview process right out of college. So I ended up working for a technology provider, security provider in the Microsoft cloud stack of technology for enterprise. Their clientele was all hedge funds, investment management firms, money movers in the Wall Street, Lower Manhattan area of New York. So I got very, very familiar with the Microsoft cloud stack, as well as performing digital investigations like I wanted to, but at these specific companies. So a lot of things that I was dealing with there were in terms of wire fraud, wire fraud that was perpetrated through hacking people's emails. So that's called business email compromise. It's one of the very common hacks that goes on today. Basically, what happens in the enterprise world is you have all these companies and they all do email, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people inside that company will do their job via email, right? That's how technology works.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So apply that to people who work in finance. Apply that to people who work in HR. Apply that to people who work in IT. They're communicating very sensitive information about their jobs via email.
Right.
So let's say you're only protecting that email via password. That's it. That you only need the password and you're in. All right. Well, get the password, and I can log into that email. I know what that person knows. Apply that to their job. Now apply that if you're a criminal, right? So that's where this goes real quick, real fast. So if you're not taking basic security measures like multi-factor authentication, and what that means is you have a password and you also have to answer a prompt on your phone on an app to say that that's you. Or you have a hardware token that shows a code on it where you need to enter that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not doing something like that, or blocking access, like don't allow logins from Nigeria. Why is Susie in accounting logging in from Lagos, Nigeria? Right?
Right.
If you're not thinking about that, you're not controlling that, all of a sudden you have criminals who basically, they go on LinkedIn. That's the state of today. They go on LinkedIn, they look up your company, they look at your company website, they understand who works where, they understand who does wire transfers all day. They already know who to look at to get the accounting information from online cloud storage, and they roll the dice. Let's try to get this person's password. Let's try to log in, and because they don't know if you have multi-factor authentication and security controls in place until they try to log in and they get blocked, right? So that's the state of business email compromise today. They'll get access to the controllers of your company, the CFO. They'll read all the emails. They'll spend a week. They'll understand how you move money in your organization better than you know. Right?
Right.
And then they interject themselves. Hey, Bobby Sue over at Credit Suisse Bank, we have a new vendor that we want to send money to, and we need to change the direct deposit information. Please see attached. It's the legitimate file with a changed bank account information. That's how it works.
This exact same thing just happened to my girlfriend's company. The exact same thing. Where I think they got like a $290,000, a submitted order approved. It went through. It went through, and now the company's trying to get their money back through insurance.
Yeah.
And it's
wow.
Well, we'll get into insurance. Cyber insurance is a complete another beast, and I'll get into that. I got a thing against cyber insurance, but so basically that's how it works. And it's very common today. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who perpetrate wire fraud on this scale tend to be from either the APAC region or the African region. So a lot of the guys who used to do old school Nigerian prince email schemes, you guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I need this much. I'm a prince, blah, blah, blah. A lot of those guys who live in Lagos specifically, or Nigeria, or different African countries, they just learn all right, we were doing these email schemes back in the day. What's the next evolution of it?
Right.
Oh, it's getting access to the corporate emails and understanding how the companies work and wiring out millions of dollars. So in my experience from my first job out of college through my consulting experience, I've seen $10,000 move out. I've seen $200,000 move out.
Wow.
I've seen entire funds of investment firms, every penny over the course of 2 weeks, move out.
Wow.
In the millions, in the tens of millions of dollars in 2 weeks. That's the type of cases I was working in my consulting experience. And unfortunately, it's not just hacking the emails and doing this interjection. It's also manipulating emails. So emails are how we interface with our different business vendors and people, right? So there's something called inbox rules. And you could really specify with inbox rules what you want to do. So what these guys do is they get access to a sensitive account. They understand how money moves, things like that in the company. And what they do is I'm going to put a new inbox rule. The user can't see the inbox rule. It's a hidden inbox rule. They do some funky stuff on the back end to make it unviewable, right? And what it does is it looks for the keywords in the body or subject or sender of the email. Hack, virus, reset password, bank transfer, wire, social security. They'll literally put a list like this long. They'll name the inbox rule, period. That's it. That's the name of the inbox rule. Instead of forward to archive or put into this folder, it's just period. So even if it's an invisible email rule, and even if you see it, you might miss it because it's just named period or comma or period or period. Right? Undescript.
Right.
So basically, these inbox rules can be as specific as possible to manipulate your inbox. So commonly, what they'll do is they'll identify who you email to wire out money, and they'll say, all right, if I receive a email from at so-and-so at so-and-so bank or this subject or these keywords, mark that email as read and go hide it. Go put it in the archive. Go put it in the deleted items. Go put it in the RSS feed folder. Get it out of here. Don't let that person see it. And it's automated. So the second that email gets delivered, the person will never see it. So next thing you know, over the course of the next 2 weeks, $200 million, $100 million, $2 gets wired out. Doesn't matter what it is. The person's never going to know about it until it's too late. They get the phone call from the bank. Hey, just want to verify that this stuff was real. Like, this is really weird for you guys. But by the time that happens, the way the SWIFT bank transfer system works, the way wire transfers work in banks and their electronic backends, you basically have, I believe it's for typical wire transfers, 3 to 5 days to cancel the transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, I might be wrong on that. It's been a little while. If you don't catch it and the bank doesn't catch it in that time frame, it's gone. It could already be transferred to another account and another account and another account. And next thing you know, 50 money mules over in Romania or wherever or Nigeria is all cashing out ATMs. The next thing you know,
Wow.
So that's how BEC works.
Mike,
I got
Nick,
really good at that.
Unbutton your top button if it was the DOD.
Stop
And then follow-up question. Follow-up question. Okay, so like, is there ever a moment? I don't even know if you can answer this. Is there ever a moment where, like, let's say, somebody gets hacked and a couple million gets stolen out of their account? There's no recourse for them. I feel like from a legal standpoint, like they can't go get the police in Nigeria or wherever to go knock on that hacker's door and be like, okay, guys, you may want to transfer that back. So do they ever privately go after these guys?
Yeah, and we'll get into something which is I like to call the ransomware epidemic or the ransomware plague or the fifth horseman. So basically,
the fifth horseman. That is the scariest shit I've ever heard.
Ransomware is very scary. Ransomware is scary.
Christ.
So basically, that at the core of your question is attribution, right? How do we know who does this shit? And that is like the hardest. It's one of the hardest questions in cybersecurity because, and I have a bunch of, I in preparation for the show, what I did was, and we don't have to get into all of it, but I basically went through the Wikipedia of historical hacks and things that stood out to me because I really started following this stuff in 2006, right? I was on YouTube. I was watching the big hacks at the time, and I wanted to know how they worked. So like everything from like the Target hack where, some random dude broke into their HVAC system and then through the HVAC system got into the credit card system, stole their credit cards, to the OPM hack, which is the Office of Personnel Management of the United States, which is basically how everyone, your HR system for the U.S. government, where the Chinese hackers went in, they exfiltrated out everyone's data. Like I was always following this stuff, so it's like I lost my train of thought there. What was the
I couldn't tell if you lost your train of
I
thought.
thought you were frozen for a second.
Dramatic pause.
No,
Very
Lou,
dramatic.
Lou, what was your initial question with that?
It was the private security aspect of it, like, going to them outside of like
The attribution, yes. So I apologize. So you lead into stuff like that was the early stuff where it was you had the U.S. government, prosecuting people, right? Like the Target guy, in the Target hack, like the person who did that got prosecuted because the U.S. government did attribution. Right. Sorry, that's where I was going with it. With the OPM hack, it took a few years, but the U.S. attributed to state-sponsored hackers, right? Attribution is very difficult in cybersecurity if a government's not doing the attribution. Right. And even when the government's doing the attribution, you have to trust the government is accurate with their signal intelligence, their personal intelligence, their OSINT, right? Like we're basically like private cybersecurity companies can only do so much to attribute it. So the way that it's done today is you have some designations of different groups, different hacking groups, right? That private companies basically create, and there's no standard. There's no standard to this. So some companies will call them APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats, and they'll number them. APT 28, that's the Russian SVR, right? Like AP 29, that's another Russian APT group. But then you have like APT 40 something, and that's like the Chinese, state-sponsored military hackers, right? So like different companies will make their own attributions, but then other companies call them UNCs, unclears or unknowns, and they'll name like UNC 2764, and like this company, this actor was responsible for this hack, and then people will start to piece together things like, oh, UNC XYZ is related to APT number of XYZ, and like I have a Mike, I sent it to you in the in Discord, I believe, but there's a good picture there that in terms of ransomware, it talks about, the different groups and how everything like attributes to everything, but it gets very difficult when you're talking about government sponsored actors because they will deliberately mislead on indicators that prove who they are. And a great example of that is if you look at the incident of, it was titled Olympic Destroyer. So this was an attack that was targeted at the Seoul, South Korea Olympics.
Okay.
Wow.
A few years back, I believe it was 2016. So what happened was they have an entire data center, to run the Olympics, and during the opening nights they have a drone ceremony with the flags and everything, all this stuff.
Yep.
People have Wi-Fi to get in, and their badges are on their phones, right? And all of a sudden, the Wi-Fi starts to go off, everything starts to go off, XYZ. Turns out someone hacked into their data center that was controlling everything and started deployed malware that started destroying computers, right? It would encrypt everything, it would break everything, it would wipe the computer so you couldn't even turn it back on. And these are virtual computers, so like it's not a physical thing you can unplug to some extent, but
right.
At the end of the day, it is a physical thing. So like computers within computers were getting destroyed, if you will. So like it turns out at the end of the day, it ended up being what is believed the Russian government, Russian military hackers who did that. But if you look at the actual report of the reverse engineering of that malware, there were signatures from Chinese hacking groups in there. There were signatures from United States NSA hackers in there. There were groups from North Korean hackers in there, Russian hackers, Italian hackers, the MI6 hackers, right? So they deliberately manipulated their malware to look like other people's malware.
Oh.
So the issue at the end of the day with attribution in cybersecurity is if you don't have a government coming out and saying 100% this is who it is, and we can trust us that our signals intelligence and our human intelligence is accurate to attribute this in terms of in addition to our cyber intelligence, you can't tell who's doing what.
Right.
You really can't. And the issue as well plays into the common state of ransomware, where the history of ransomware is very interesting. Nowadays, it's something called ransomware as a service, where you have organized crime groups who actually create the file that does the encryption of a computer, and then they basically get like Uber drivers of the ransomware who will hack into companies. They'll scout out the company. They'll exfiltrate all the sensitive data out first to double extortion you later. And then they'll basically understand how everything works. So like, all right, let's drop the ransomware. And then they basically get the ransomware from the organized crime gang. They come in, they encrypt everything, they get paid out, and then they basically do a split with the people who made the code.
Wow.
But here's the thing. The attribution at that level is very difficult to do without government attribution. because you
Right.
could have the military of another government pretending to be a hacker, leverage that service, go hack a pipeline somewhere, go encrypt the entire pipeline, cause a gas shortage on the eastern coast of the United States, and say, "Oh, it was the crazy Russian hackers." I don't know.
Right.
I don't know who it was.
Wow.
So,
So
yeah,
is that what we're
yeah.
facing now? Like that's okay. So as we start to, and as we get into the second hour, we're going to bring in our panelists. But as we get into the second hour, I want to get more deep into it. So you're kind of setting us up here to talk about the kind of global warfare that's now happening. Because what I didn't realize about this was that people had such not only do they have invisibility in the hacking process, but they're now making it look like other people are actually responsible for the hacks when they're in fact responsible for the hack. So this gets very ugly very fast, and I can't imagine how deep this rabbit hole goes. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and welcome our panelist this evening. We have two panelists. I don't think the other one is here yet, but we will go ahead and introduce Aaron Desario, who is a science and technology enthusiast and currently works as a staff software engineer at Google, working on photos for iOS. He previously worked at LucasArts, Silicon Graphics, and Apple, where he co-invented and received a patent for iPhoto, a pioneer in digital photo organization. Welcome, Aaron Desario.
Hi, thanks for having me. And before you run off to grab a drink and a bio break, Nick, I wanted to, if it's the NSA, why don't you make a comment about how handsome he is today?
Oh,
Wait.
I did want to tell Luis, I love your mustache.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, guys. Didn't know it was Butter Up to Luis Day on the Singularity Lab, but not gonna lie, don't hate it. But real quick though, Nick, turn on your ceiling fan if it's the KGB.
Oh, fuck that! No, oh, come on, come on. I mean, that one I'll confirm. No,
He will confirm you do not work for the KGB. Okay, so we've got another
Can you put me
guest
backstage
joining
for
us.
1 second?
What's that?
Yeah,
Could you put me backstage 1 second? I just
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
grab a drink real quick.
yeah, go for it.
Absolutely. So we've got another guest joining us. For those of you who are blind, maybe you just don't watch this show. You've never seen this person
Maybe it's your first
before.
time.
Maybe your first time.
Maybe it's your first time on the show. If it is, subscribe, like, share.
Absolutely. And if it's not, you'll remember this person. Welcome to the renowned Jazz Shaw, who is the editor-reporter of Salem Media and The Debrief, U.S. Navy veteran, follower of the strange and the unusual, Jazz Shaw. I never thought in my life I'd ever see such a thing. But here at
Jazz has a tie.
I
Wow.
love it.
I saw that in the comments last time. It's like, why does everybody else dress up and wear a tie? And the Dolphin Emperor never wears a tie. And I was like, you know what? Good point. So let's get in the spirit of it, you know.
Shout out to Exodus. I just did subscribe. Excellent. Thank you for subscribing. We truly appreciate it. And
Amazing.
smash that like button.
So Jazz, I mean, you're looking great, brother. I'm loving the Dolphin Emperor vibe that you're bringing into this. You're bringing into this today. So thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
You look good, brother. All right. So for those of you just joining us, we are talking. We are talking about cybersecurity, cyber warfare, and what's going on around the world. We've got NP with us today. NP is a cybersecurity expert and analyst, and he won't allow us to talk about the actual companies he's worked for, nor will he allow us to share his last name. But you can rest assured, we've done our research. He is a cyber professional with a demonstrated history of subject matter and expertise in cybersecurity, digital forensics, and incident response. So he should be joining us back here in a quick second. I'm curious, Aaron, did you have any questions that you'd like to bring to NP when he comes back?
Well, I just had a comment that, you were all talking about ransomware at the last bit there of the show. And, I think that's why it's important to have, in some cases, software as a service, really, where you have a subscription to your software so that it can be kept up to date and always maintained. It's always a constant race and it's a escalation. One side will crack something, the other side will fix it, the next side will crack that, and back and forth it goes forever. So it's not just buy your software and forget it. It's you have to actually have a team there to install it, maintain it, and then the software itself has to be maintained over time. So it's a very expensive way to go.
Right. So you're basically, and this is what you're saying. So whenever Apple on my device says, "Hey, you have a new update for Apple," I should be doing that immediately. Yes.
In general, yes. Sometimes they're buggy, so you might want to just see how other people, how well other people have fared with installing it. But yeah, in general, you want to always have the latest versions of things in order to maintain the highest security.
Right. And that's something that I think a lot of us get a little lazy on. I can certainly say that I do, but the entire purpose of them doing those updates is because they're constantly patching things that are possibly related to hacking. And so if you're not updating and restoring that information, you're more likely to get hacked. What do you think about that, MP?
I heard like the last 30 seconds. Hi, Jazz. How are you?
Hey, MP.
Update your stuff all the time. And that's a really good transition, actually. If you want to
Okay. Let's do it. Let's dive in.
Wait, I had a question before we dived into that, if that's okay. What's the end game to this? I feel like there's just based off of the first hour and sort of some of the conversations we had earlier offline. Is it at some point? Is it gonna just be almost like Minority Report, where everyone's information is just gonna have to be out there, and so that way no one's hackable?
Yeah, it's and as a preface, and to reset the room, everything you're gonna hear is really sad. It's really sad. Yeah. It is, and when you work in information security or cybersecurity, and especially in the digital forensics and incident response space, you have to grow a thick skin. And I do use Android devices. I don't believe in Apple, but that's just another story. Apple still, but no, it gets really sad because I personally don't use social media because in my perspective, I don't want to put the data out there so that it could be misused. I try to limit my social media use. I try to limit the data that I create about myself in this digital world that we live in because I know that it's going to be misused if I create that data. So let's limit it where I can. And I still use delivery apps. I still use Amazon, right? Like, come on.
Right.
Some stuff you got to do. Like, I got my groceries delivered, right? Like, whatever.
I was going to say, you might want to put that dolphin mask back on if you're trying to make the footprint smaller.
But here's the thing. I worked in the heart of Manhattan. I still do. So here's the thing. If you live in somewhere like that, on your daily commute, do yourself a favor. Count how many cameras you walk past on a daily basis.
No kidding.
You'll lose count.
Yeah.
If you make it an active decision to do that on a daily basis, you'll lose count. And then you realize that your face is no longer a private asset. Right. Your identity, your biometric.
Our neighborhood, every other house has a Ring that's active and working. Like, yeah.
And Ring had secret contracts with police departments, where police departments were able to remotely access Ring and just look around, right? So, like, Luis, to get back to your answer, man, it's like after you get over the implications of, oh my God, none of our data is private, blah blah blah. What's the next step? Well, right now we're going through the tumultuous period of dealing with the implications of, stuff that was supposed to be private and inaccessible is not, right? Like, and we need to develop technology. In my opinion, we need to develop technology and secure systems that account for that. Because I can go with you guys from the history of ARPANET, the first network system using TCP/IP that was developed by the United States government and ARPA, the Advanced Research Product Agency, back in the day in '69. Now that was a system created to survive a nuclear war, right?
Right.
The government systems talk to each other. But if you actually read the scientists who are contracted by ARPA to develop that system, they inherently admit that by connecting computer systems, electronic systems together, they were designing an insecure system. because some level of inherent trust needed to be given between the two systems to even have something that worked or did something that was usable, right?
And that's why in Battlestar Galactica, they do not allow any systems to be connected. It's critical. It's critical for survival.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so
I,
like,
I
makes
take a little
sense
bit
in
of issue
space,
though
though.
with this. I'm much more optimistic. I don't think that all data will become public. I think that we have developed the technologies to keep some data private, and over time we're going to learn how to apply those and you know, make them secure with it. Especially with Nick is shaking his head no.
giving you a big head shake.
no, and I you know what I appreciate the optimism because it's a
Right.
change of pace for me. I appreciate it.
Well, remember,
Gives you a little
I'm
bit
in
of
the
things
thick
to
of this,
smile
you know,
about.
I'm in the thick of this every day, right?
Yeah, no,
I'm
and
at
you,
Google. I see what's happening, and I know like we're moving everything to HTTPS. Everything is going to be HTTPS very soon.
but like move it like just the fundamental fact that it's not already. It's 2021.
Oh, I agree. I agree. We're
Right.
behind-
And all
we're
that
behind by 20 years.
unencrypted data is still out there, and it could be leveraged in ways that we weren't expecting. And even then, the systems that we have in place today, like for example, let's look at Prism, right? And I apologize for stomping on your optimism, Aaron. Let's look at Prism.
Bring up Snowden, right? You know.
No. Forget Snowden, right? Just look at the actual implications of it, right? There's data centers out there sitting in deserts that just have terabytes and petabytes and quantabytes of data. That's just everything that has ever transpired across a United States internet cable, right? That's just
it's all
sitting there.
encrypted. It's all encrypted now.
What happens when DARPA makes the first quantum computer that can break all those previous encryptions?
Well, what actually will happen, I think, is Google will invent the quantum computer first and encrypt our data so that DARPA can't get to it.
Ooh.
The data is sitting on United States government servers. They can't break in there and encrypt their data that they already collected.
No, I mean you're right.
Right?
In terms of the
Right?
government access, we're screwed in terms of government access.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's where I'm
I
going
think in
with
terms
it.
of public or black hat access, though, I think there's a lot of reason to have
I
optimism.
mean,
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
thought it was compromised, they could blow it up. It would be like the new library at Alexandria.
It reminds right. It reminds
Yeah, you
it
can't
reminds me
even
of
get a
Fight Club.
You couldn't get you couldn't get an explosive device within like 10 miles of that place without like getting like taken down by like a full suite of attack helicopters, right? Like it's that critical. Like they have the data, it's sitting on ice, right? They don't know how to break it. They don't know how to read it, but they will.
So one of the things
I'm not sure either of that, right? I'm also not convinced that quantum computers are going to be able to break the standard two-factor encryption that we have now.
No, so the way that it works is the way that Prism worked, right? And I was talking about it before with HTTPS versus like, and I was talking about sniffing, man in the middle stuff, right? Like, so basically, if you're on a network of computers talking to each other, it could be the entire United States, if you will, talking, all the computers in the United States talking to each other. Imagine you had that view, right? Imagine you record the network traffic of every computer in the United States talking to each other. And you had that saved in a data center somewhere, right? You can't read it technically unless you could break encryption. And encryption in terms of that data is HTTPS. It's certificate-based RSA or XYZ encryption. And it differs website to website, computer to computer, web server to web server. Nothing is the same. So in some instances, you just have HTTP. You just have unencrypted data, just boom, boom, boom. Everything that was sent back and forth between that website that was unencrypted and any computer on Earth, because apply that logic further, you're recording all the data in the United States. If someone in Russia connects to an unencrypted server in the United States, you know, that's a byproduct of intelligence gathering. You're going to get that data, right?
Right.
Right? So that's the data they have. So it's all levels of encryption. It's unencrypted data, and it's on ice. It's sitting somewhere, right? So they want to go back.
So basically, you're saying that all of the there have been so many hacks already that the amount of data that people are now getting updated and behind HTTPS and different things, the data's already out there and can be used against us in another way. Can you give us an example of this? You brought up RSA. Can you tell us, like, what was the RSA hack? What is the SolarWinds hack? How are these things related?
Well, so RSA,
So there's different
algorithm is what he's talking about there. That's what's used to encrypt the data.
It's both an encryption algorithm and a company.
Yes,
it is. So it's like
it's a company that has some weird, suspicious CIA ties too. I'll say that as well.
And we'll talk about that.
Twirl your mustache if it was the CIA.
No.
We already
ask her. Was it the CIA?
Yeah.
Was it?
Lick your ass if it was the CIA.
Yeah.
So all right. So what I was just describing in terms of Prism and everything, that's a different issue than what I'm going to talk about in a second, right?
Okay.
So this is with the issue with Prism in these data centers of mass intelligence collection. What the main issue is, they got old data going back from like 2000 whatever, like early 2000s to present, and it's still ongoing. And they're just sitting this data there, right? So when they find a way to break all of those encryption algorithms, because RSA, DES, Cha-Cha, like all these crazy encryption algorithms, the way they work at the end of the day in terms of math is just calculating two really large prime numbers that factor together. You get quantum, you break all that encryption overnight because
Not
it's on ice. It's old
That's a
data.
theory. It's all a theory. I don't personally subscribe to that theory. I don't think quantum computers are going to be able to break that style of encryption. But that's up for debate, right? That is something that has not yet been determined.
If it can, which in theory, if you have a sufficient enough qubits with quantum correction for error, and Google's planning that out. I watched that most recent presentation.
I know.
They got that roadmap, right? Like they're looking to do it, which I'm all about, right? It's like the second we get those types of systems, we can do a lot of stuff.
If we don't do it, somebody else will, and
exactly.
It better be in front.
It's going to happen either way. I mean, but the implications of it need to be addressed because like all this data is sitting on ice somewhere. So like anyone's ever done on the internet for the past like 20 years is about to get exposed when that gets developed, if it can break the encryption algorithms of varying degree.
Point, right? I mean, there have been several different lengths of these keys. They've gone from 512 bytes and they're up to 4K and 8K now as a standard. And so there will be questions of whether they'll be able to break the data. The data is going to obsolete over time. And so I just don't see that as being all that much of a risk personally.
Yeah, no, it depends on how efficient they can get a quantum system to break old encryption algorithms, right? Like and that's something to be discovered. Granted that it hasn't been discovered already, and we just don't know about it. That's always something I think about. But
who knows what's going on in the halls of the NSA.
So that's or DARPA or whoever XYZ, right? So that's the on ice issue, right? Of all data that's ever been created up until this point. Now we're going to talk about what's going on now. So you mentioned RSA, you mentioned SolarWinds. These are both big hacks on big security companies or IT companies in the United States. Now it's become death. Everyone's fucked. It's not just the United States. That's the thing. Everyone's fucked, and that's the best part about cybersecurity. So we're going to talk about RSA real quick. So this was a hack in, I'm just trying to look on my list of what year it was. Control F. Aaron, what languages do you code in?
Objective-C and now Swift. I write primarily for iOS, but I've been all over the place in my career. I think I'm about 20-year head start on you in terms of the computing technologies.
Yeah, and that's something that I really appreciate about my job experiences working in the consulting field. I've seen like anywhere between 200 and 300 like production enterprise environments that are hybrid cloud joined XYZ, right? And like having that experience.
We need standards, really.
We do.
That's kind of really the issue.
It's a mess.
That there's no regulation and there are no standards. The government should be telling these companies, you need to secure your data, provide mechanisms for them to do that. And we should all be working together on solving this problem.
I'm sorry, that was hilarious.
No,
keep going. Keep going. That was hilarious.
It will never happen. It will never happen.
Perspective, right? They don't even have building code. Like we had this building that just fell down in Miami.
Right.
So like we need a lot.
Let me give you guys a cyber example of that. So the firewall in terms of cybersecurity and networking and computer security. What is a firewall? You hear this term all the time. You get like CSI computer crimes, whatever. 2 idiots, 1 keyboard. Have you guys ever seen that?
Yeah. Where they're
like
trying
2
to
people
break
typing
down
on
the
a
firewall.
keyboard.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. That's not real, right?
Yeah.
Let me just clarify something real quick. I didn't say that we need the government to do this. We need the government to require this.
Yeah.
Right.
Private companies will do the work.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and Aaron, I'll give you some great examples
That'll
of
happen.
governments, other governments. No. Jazz, you're right. It needs to happen.
The government's going to say, okay, you have to do this. You just told them to stop the tide from coming in.
Well, hold on.
Hold
on. Let me give you an example.
Sorry.
Let me give you 2 real-world examples where the tide was not broken. So we look at our other superpowers in the world, right? We look at China and we look at Russia. And I know this was a very clickbait thumbnail. Haha. But no, let's take a look at foreign capabilities because these are very real and this is the world we live in. We do no longer live in a world where military might is determined by how big your air force is or how many aircraft carriers you're floating around in the middle of the ocean, right? We're talking about a complete hybrid warfare approach in the 21st century. What that means is anything goes. It's literally street rules, right? It's you can hack someone's computer, you could dump and leak someone's emails and damage another country. You could blow up the fucking internet over in another country. You can knock off their power grid for a week while you invade a portion of their country. These are real world things that we deal with now, and it's all because of hybrid warfare. And what I mean by that is you have stuff like RSA, and you would approach some questions about RSA, and that was a physical device that basically gave a second password that you would have to type in to access a secure system. Governments used it, Lockheed used it, base systems used it, everyone, right? And they were aware that they were compromised, and they had an entire investigation. There's a great Wired post, and I would like to provide, I have a list of sources for anyone in your audience that would like to investigate further.
I'll put everything in the description
Please
after.
do. That is a full list of all the references that I'm talking about today.
Right.
Got it.
But we all use FIDO keys now, right? We don't use those anymore.
Well, or we use Authenticator apps. Apps on your phone, on your business
those are
right?
not so safe. That's not very.
They
secure,
are actually.
Nor is the cell phone option. That's
Yeah. So let's dig.
I have. So let me ask you this, because I have authenticators. So I'm a Facebook marketer. In order to get into my Facebook account, I've got a third-party authenticator that's associated with my Facebook login. Is that safe? Am I safe?
Secure?
Am I safe?
So here's the thing.
Yeah, you're pretty.
So
safe.
Aaron, to address your point, we have multiple types of multi-factor authentication. So single-factor authentication is your password, right? And to everyone in the audience, I recommend you go take a look at 1Password. It's a free product to consumers. It's a password manager. And what that means is you have one master password that you have very complex in your head, but you memorize that. It's a complex thing with letters and numbers and pass phrases. It could be song quotes. It could be whatever, right? But integrated with complex symbols and things like that. Mm-hmm. You remember that. That's the only thing you need to remember for the rest of your life. And then you have multi-factor in terms of a password application, a multi-factor application. So text messaging for multi-factor is not secure anymore. SMS or text message networks, which are cell phones and text messages, travel over your AT&Ts, your Verizons, your T-Mobiles, right? They're not secure. You can get is it called a shark fin? Or I forget what it's called, but you could basically buy a device that replicates a cell phone network.
Right.
You
And
can
even
intercept.
easier than that, they can just they can do some social engineering on the company and get the number assigned to their own SIM.
They could SIM swap it. It's called SIM swapping. They basically pretend to be you. They call into your phone provider that, oh, I lost my phone at a bar last night. Send me the new thing. My new address is XYZ. Next thing you know, you're the person's phone. Like, so we need to. So with RSA with the password manager, it's basically one password, an app on your phone, which is bound to your phone in terms of your hardware profile and other things with the identity provider of that. So for Microsoft, the Microsoft Authenticator app, which I use very frequently, it not only looks at your IP address and things like that, it looks at the hardware profile of your phone and your device profile. So like it's a random sign-in from an iPhone over in Indonesia, but I use an Android phone in America, it's going to pick up a conflict, right?
Can you answer Andrew's question real quick? I thought Signal encrypted by text messages. Is that not true?
Yeah, so Signal doesn't work through SMS. So Signal sends data in terms of messages. It's like Facebook Messenger, right? Facebook Messenger works on Wi-Fi, but not on 4G or 5G, right?
Right.
It works through Wi-Fi, the internet. Signal works the same way. It sends text messages to phone numbers via an app, but over the internet, not through cell towers. It can travel through cell towers, but it's encrypted when it does.
Right.
Just to be clear, out of
It's
the
traveling
entire
as internet.
crowd here, I just want to make sure I'm the only one in this group. And correct me if I'm wrong. That basically logs into everything through Google with one password. That's my dog's name and my birthday, and I don't use any of these things that you're talking about. It's just I turn on. So
Jazz, you're close.
that's
You're
just
very-
me,
you're almost-
right?
No, that's actually not too bad as long as you have the password saved in your Google browser, right? And then what you need to do
No,
is
I
enable
keep it on a piece of
two-factor-
paper underneath my
Oh,
laptop.
okay, well, no,
you know.
I'm gonna
then
scare you
you're not
guys.
gonna be in some great shape.
I'm going to scare you
but-
guys.
So
Well-
let me just finish that thought before you scare us all to death. What you should do is put a two-factor authentication on your Google account, and then you can safely use Google Browser to generate and save passwords in a very similar way to 1Password. I actually use 1Password myself. I don't use the Google passwords because it has a cool feature with Apple in that if you have an Apple Watch, you can just double-click the crown on your watch, and it will unlock things for you. It's perfectly magical. Anyway, go ahead and now scare the shit out of us.
Scare the shit out of us.
All right. Can you, I have something shared in the stream. Will you see this?
Oh yeah, there you go.
All right.
Yep.
So I'm going to reference this. This is the infographic of ransomware. And this was posted by Twitter user at Piffy, Piffey. Please go subscribe and, follow them if you're interested in this. So you just mentioned something about saving passwords in your browser manager, right? So you log into a browser. All right, I'm going to save this. I'll access this later, trust this, right? So this is basically this person, what they did was they went across all the different ransomware organized crime groups that are operating right now.
Can you zoom in a little more, and maybe share with where we should focus here?
Yeah,
that's good.
So this is basically from June 2021. These are the different ransomware victims or groups. So you have very common ransomware operators like Solarwinds or Revel. This right here is a Russian organized crime group, also known as Evil Corp. They're on the U.S. OFAC sanction list.
Evil Corp.
Yep. You have Ragnar
Sounds
Locker.
like a cartoon.
You have
I want
Darkside.
that T-shirt. I want that.
Evil Corp.
Yeah, that is a good t-shirt.
That and Dolphin Emperor.
So
Exactly.
when you see something on this list right here, when I was talking before, I said there are ransomware services. Basically, there's organized criminals, literally dudes sitting over in Commonwealth of Independent States countries, and I'll tell you why that's important. So those are countries that, when the Soviet Union broke up, those countries became independent countries, right? Czechoslovakia, Romania, Ukraine, Romania, Belarus, right? There's like 12 or 13 of them. So in that Eastern European bloc, right?
Mhm.
So what's interesting about those is if you live there, and this is like basically like the starter kit, or like you ever see those memes like blank starter kit?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you want to be a ransomware starter kit, it's like number one, go live in one of these countries. Number 2, go download these custom tools. Number 3, hack these companies. Number 4, get paid. And the reason it is if you look at Russian law in terms of cybercrime, the only way that Russia will investigate cybercrime is if a Russian entity, a Russian organization, or a Russian network, or a
This goes
Commonwealth
back
of
to your
Independent
point
States
earlier,
network
Lou.
is hacked first. Only then will they investigate and prosecute criminals. So, a very common thing in terms of, so these are all different organized groups that are operating out of these countries. They could be APAC as well, but I'll tell you, Egregor, Ragnarok, Babuk, Maze. Maze is a very popular one. Conti, Netwalker, Doppelpaymer, Nephilim, Sodabaniki, Ragnarok,
And are these all
Ragnarlocker,
like
and
where-
Darkside,
like-
Clop,
okay.
Abaddon? They're all based out of those countries.
Oh,
I'll tell
all
you
of
that right
those
now.
are-
All
Wow.
of those. All
Michael,
of
can you
those.
put me backstage for a minute,
Yep.
please?
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
Yes, all of those that I just listed in this pie graph are located in those countries. And the way you can tell that is there have been countless sources, and I can't give enough credit to the DFIR community. There are people in threat intelligence, there are people in reverse engineering who are working day in and day out to analyze malware and different malicious samples from compromised networks that these criminals have compromised, that publish their findings for everyone to view. And they attribute things like even things like IP addresses they're talking back to over in Russia and Russian data centers. The comments, when you code, and Aaron, you know this, you make comments in your code, right?
Yeah.
So other people can understand what you're doing. It's in Cyrillic. It's in those dialects. That's where it's originating from. And, you know, you attribute this with FBI, you attribute this with the US government. Like, we know where this is coming from, and we know that they're giving it a free pass on purpose.
Lou, Kristen, and I are all making the dragon faces. We're
Yeah.
like,
What the fuck?
huh?
I wish we were better friends with Bert Kreischer
Huh? Well, why?
because he's the machine. Like maybe he's
The
exempt.
machine. I love Bert Kreischer. The machine. Okay,
Yeah, and
so
this stuff is advanced. This stuff, like this chart right here, the way we look at this is on the leftmost, right? It's like where they come in from, and on the right is the ransomware. Okay, so
Okay.
like these are the different types of ransomwares. These are organized criminals who are developing this specific type of ransomware, right? This right here, can you guys see my mouse?
Yeah.
the Trojan
All right.
horses. Yeah.
So like this stuff, this is malware. This is malware that will basically sit on computers for months, weeks, days, years. I've seen compromises that literally like this Quackbot right here, this Cobalt Strike, TrickBot. TrickBot's infamous. TrickBot was just taken down by the U.S. government.
Focus in on it at
Yeah.
all.
Can you bring it as close? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Is that
there we
good?
go. Yeah.
So like all these like Emotet, this is a famous piece of malware. Like these are pieces of malware that are developed and designed. So you have your companies who make software, right? You have your Googles, you have your Microsofts, right? And they have like billion to $1 million like funding schemes, right? These guys make billions a year, billions with a B, on hacking companies and extorting them. And they take that money and they pay off their Russian or whoever the contracts, right? And they reinvest in better hacking techniques, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on, right? So these pieces of malware are
So when you say they're extorting,
better
like-
and better.
Okay, so they're extorting these companies. They're literally saying you got to pay us money in order to get your computer software back, and these companies are doing it. And why don't we hear about this as much as you think we do? Like
You
I don't
do.
hear about.
You do and
Okay.
you don't. That's the
Okay.
thing. So the way, if you take a look at cybersecurity laws, how they're written, so you guys can still see this, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, are you asking why the news media is not covering?
Well, I'm just
this,
curious
or-
because the first time I heard about this was the oil pipeline hack, and then they actually paid them off, right? And I had
yeah,
never
most of
like
the time this happens
thought we
to
don't-
real estate agents.
I thought we don't negotiate with terrorists. Like that's what I
This
thought
happens
America was like.
everywhere. You don't hear this. You don't hear how bad it is. Like
It happens
it's
all the
so
time, and it
bad.
happens to mom and pops, and that's not newsworthy.
No. It happens to Fortune 100s, and you don't hear
that too,
about it.
yeah.
Like it's
Right.
that bad. Like so I highlighted here in 1986 we created in Congress the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. The Computer Fraud and
Schoolcraft in the
Abuse Act
house.
is the old school.
I can't
Thank you,
see what
Schoolcraft.
you're highlighting. I have no idea what you're highlighting.
It's up towards the top. It's just hard because it's small.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Sure.
After more and more break-ins to government and corporate computers, Congress passes the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which makes it a crime to break into any computer system. Okay.
Yeah, so they basically passed a blanket law, which was like you hack or you access a computer, it doesn't matter. Like literally, you could be like an administrator who has legitimate access to something, and you used it in an inappropriate way. And up until now, which Congress last month actually ruled that this didn't apply, even if you had legitimate access to like files and systems and you used it in a weird way or used in a wrong way that abused your access privileges, like you went to jail. You went to jail for a long time.
And is this only in the U.S.? What if a hacker in
Yes.
the U.S. is hacking somebody in Russia or China? Is it the same law?
No. Why would a Russian entity apply to U.S. law? It's the same. And like when Biden went up, and we can get into this. And I talk about this a lot because basically I'll give you guys a TLDR of cyber warfare. So we have ARPA here, which we talked about, right?
ARPA?
Right.
Yep. So this was the first computer network ever
right.
made.
The Advanced Research and Projects Agency.
Yep. So this was like the first computer. It was U.S. government entities, right? You know, war games in
1969,
'83. So we're fast forwarding like 20 years, maybe what was that, like 15. 86, more and more more and more government networks start getting hacked. 88, you had the first worm. A worm in terms of hacking is a piece of malware that compromises a computer that self-propagates, and it basically, oh, I hacked a computer, what's around me? Let me hack those. All right, I hacked computers, what's around me? Let me hack those. So on and so forth, and it propagates over the entire internet. So every computer on Earth, right? So that was in 88.
It was right around this time that William Gibson predicted the future, by the way.
I'm not familiar with. I'm not
So
familiar with
reset.
them.
He was the author of, he invented the term cyberpunk, basically, and he was an author from the 80s.
So real quick, I just want to quickly reset the room. So for those of you just joining us, we are digging deep here into cyber warfare, the history of hacks throughout the United States and around the world. We've got NP here with us, who is appropriately not sharing his last name. He is a cybersecurity aficionado. I don't think you would mind if I say that right. Aficionado, cybersecurity, digital forensics, and incident response. We've also got Jazz Shaw with us today. Jazz, Kristen, and Luis and I are just trying to keep up with this conversation. And then we've got Aaron Desario, who is way ahead of us. And he's a software engineer with Google.
Do you guys have any questions before?
Oh, and also we have Chris Evans. He's Captain America.
I had two, if that's okay. And I will tell you that I'm going to be just in the background because so much of this is, I don't even know why Mike invited me to come here for the most part. But I was following along earlier before I came on. And if NP doesn't mind answering, these are less technical and more general. You talked a bit about going outside your house and taking a walk or driving and counting the number of cameras that you might encounter. I am curious, NP, when did we reach the point where we felt that once you left your own home, your own castle, that you had some right to privacy, that digital things couldn't be watching you, or saying, oh, well, look, we picked up his license number from a camera going through this intersection, or he was picked up, he or she was picked up, walking past this camera, at a bank on one of the remote tellers or something. When did we come to the conclusion that that was somehow unacceptable or an invasion? When you leave your home and go out in the public square, people can see you. They can go, "Oh, I saw that guy." And if somebody comes and asks them later, "Did you see that guy?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, I saw that guy. I know him. That's right."
Yeah.
So
Jazz,
why is that like an invasion to say that, oh, you can't record us, you can't say we went here or there, or I was seen at this place? When did we reach that point?
Yeah, and just to answer Aaron, I actually had to read Neuromancer in school. I didn't recall who the author was. So
Awesome,
thank you. So Jazz, I want to approach your question with a little bit of interjection. Interjection before I answer. So you approached it from, when did we start thinking that it was an invasion of privacy, right?
Right.
I want to flip that. I want to approach that from, when did we accept that? Because we did at some point. We accepted this, and this is the world we live in. You might not realize that you accepted it, but you accepted it.
Well, I think Jazz does realize. I think he believes
all along.
In the 1600s, in the 1800s, like when did we assume that we should have privacy when walking in the public square? I think that's Jazz's question.
Exactly. That's the question.
Yeah, if you look at privacy law.
When did you have that privacy?
So if you look at privacy law, right? So I did have to take one course. So and I try to keep myself up to date on it, but in cybersecurity law. And if you look at privacy law as it applies to the United States, a few years ago, we have zero expectation of privacy as written by law when you leave your home.
Right. That was my point.
So that's my understanding of privacy law as it applies today. And when did it become such a commonality? I want to say 10 years ago. If you look around the 2010 time, we just started getting smart devices. We just started understanding the implications of having IP cameras and things like that, and camera systems and informatica systems that are just on the internet all the time, right? So it really was when the price of that software and those devices became so cheap that anyone on earth can make them. And we can, all of a sudden, everyone can just have cameras all the time and view anything, right? And then you have the application of it where, all right, governments and, public safety organizations are saying, all right, well, this is so cheap, why don't we just put them on every corner? And the businesses tag on to it. All right, we have building security. We deal with physical security. I want to know my employees when they walk in. I want to know via camera that that's actually who they are. And I can go back on video and prove, like, if someone stole their badge and it came in, that it wasn't them, right? So all of a sudden you have everyone tacking
Mission
on.
Impossible movie.
You have everyone tacking
Minority
on.
Report.
Like, when it became consumer friendly, I want to say it's about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the 2010, once it started becoming commoditized.
You got the hairball, Aaron. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
No,
it's
it didn't
really
come
that.
up. I tried.
But you're
in my
saying
opinion,
that's
that's
a bad thing, right? I mean, you're saying that's a bad thing.
No, I'm not. I'm not putting an opinion on it. It's the reality.
Oh, okay.
It's the reality. That data's out there, regardless. Like, and
I'm
that's
not
the way I try to
following
approach
what
it.
the issue is that you're trying to address.
Well, the data can be misused and used efficiently. So criminals, governments, anyone who has access to it. It doesn't matter who has access to it. They can use or misuse it, right? Like, so we apply that to the Five Eyes, right? Like the intelligence conglomerate of Western countries, right? Like Western. They have access to that data.
I guess it was good enough, Aaron. I guess your hairball was good enough. For those of you just listening right now, we've got a $50 donation from Schoolcraft, who was hoping that we could see MP's cat cough up a hairball. He did not, but Aaron did it for us. Thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Cat's been working very hard to entertain us because I've been paying attention.
She's never coughed up a hairball.
So let me real quick, because I think this is an important point that you bring up, Jazz. Like, okay, so the idea is you're outside in the public square. It's the public square. You don't have any right to privacy. You're in the public square. But in the past, we didn't have these devices that could be watching everything all the time. So I think the concern is that these devices can now be used for nefarious purposes, or for other reasons that we're not privy to, and that's where Big Brother can start to step in and gather more data on you. And for example, like in China, they have, if you cross the street and you're not supposed to cross the street, they've got that on camera, and your social score comes down, and maybe you can't rent an apartment now because of that.
They actually have something called smart cities. I'm sorry to interject there. They have something called smart cities. So they have entire Chinese companies who make computer systems which range from IP cameras to smart crossing signs to the back end cloud analytics platforms, where basically they've been as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that.
Dude, your cat is like getting kinky right now behind you, bro. I'm not gonna lie. Like
my
is.
My wife has come in twice and was like, "The cat is the best part." Of
No. We want to see the cat. It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah,
she's worried about her privacy, Michael.
Her digital footprint. Son of a bitch. You can't hide.
Feet print, because she's got 4. Michael,
she's never gonna get a job now.
I'm not gonna do my usual thing and take up the whole show. I had 2 questions for MP.
Yeah.
Can I just throw in the second one?
Yeah.
Because those answers, plural, really do tie in well. And this is more of a historical perspective type of question for MP. It's long been an opinion of mine, and I will tell you right up front, I'm the opposite of you. I am almost by definition a Luddite, and I'm sure you're familiar with that term. Have we not, with all of our advancements, been creating all these new opportunities, creating all these new technological advantages that allow us to do things we could never do in the past? But it has always seemed to me that every time we make one of these huge leaps, and the internet is the best example I could think of, where we come up with something that's like, holy cow, look at all these new capabilities. But we create a new series of problems that we now spend all of our time and all of our technological resources trying to solve. And they were problems of our own creation. The people that rebelled against having automated machines to go harvest the grain were mad that they lost their jobs. We've now amplified that by a factor of billions or trillions. And now every time the internet, in some ways, it's done amazing things. I wouldn't have the job I have if it wasn't for the internet. I get that. But at the same time, MP, I wanted to ask you, in the context I just gave of Luddites, I think the internet is like edging into my top 5 list of doom porn that I talk with Michael about a lot, about what's eventually going to destroy us, because it has created great opportunities and many solutions and things we can do, but at the same time, it's creating this cascading series of problems that we don't seem to be able to keep up with. And eventually, doesn't the system just collapse?
So before
you answer that, MP, Matt Monroe just donated $24.99 and for keeping us entertained, for keeping him entertained. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Taking shots for every $50 donation today.
So Jazz, I just want to level set with you on that. Your question was inherently, are we recognizing the issues or potential issues that are created when we develop some of these awesome kick-ass technological systems? And are we addressing them in any way, shape, or form? Is that correct?
Well, that's a slightly different spin on it. I was more asking, are all these advances creating more problems than we're able to handle because of the inherent nature of human beings? That there are always some people out there that if you come up with a metal plow instead of a wooden one, there's going to be a whole bunch of people. They're going to go, oh, I can now plow more land. But there's X number of people that are going to go, oh, that metal's pretty cool. I could turn that into a sword and kill somebody.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and there's
Yeah.
always that number of people that are going to do that, and it just seems to accelerate the more the technology advances.
It's a
Right. And
combination.
just one thing real quick. I mean, there are people out there who will say that the invention of the electric light bulb is an extinction level event. Like that was the moment where we could now stay up late and, and everything evolved from that. And now we are where we are. I think it's a great question.
Yeah,
it's a matter of society progressing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, nobody in the U.S., no U.S. citizen would imagine carrying a suitcase bomb into New York and blowing the whole thing up. But somebody in Iraq or another country can be seen as coming here and doing that sort of thing to us. Now, imagine when their standard of living gets up to the point where ours is, they suddenly no longer want to blow things up too, right? That population shrinks of wrongdoers, especially if you find a way to rein in the technology. We start putting authentication chips on guns so only the owner can fire it. For example.
Good luck with getting that actually applied.
So let's get NP to answer. Let's get NP to answer Guy's question, and then after that, we're going to answer Neurostream's question because he just put in a $50 donation. We're going to answer that next. Okay, go ahead.
I also got one more question after that too.
So Jazz, to get to the fundamental issue, yes.
And just so everyone knows, we're gonna have MP back in the future. So if you missed anything or you have questions, we're gonna have him back. So don't worry.
Yep.
Go ahead,
fundamentally, the issue is yes, when we design systems like this where we're connecting insecure systems to each other, there are going to be very unintended consequences that no one even imagined that was going to happen. Right? You start plugging in computers to wires or Wi-Fi and everything's talking to each other. Yes. Things that were overlooked will be misused by third parties to do bad things. That's fundamentally cybersecurity, right? So,
or your own government sometimes.
And that's where
exactly.
hold on. So at the most fundamental level, that's what's going on, right? Flaws in interconnected systems are being exploited for unintended consequences. Now apply that to who can do that. You have governments, you have literal organized military units of thousands of people who have $1 million payroll to fund these hacking operations. You have foreign governments doing the same exact thing, right? It gets to a point where the envelope gets pushed as to how bad this can get. And some examples I'll give you is when Russia invaded Ukraine, there were two hacks that coincided with the annexation of Crimea. There was the Black Energy hack in 2015, and there was the Crash Override hack in 2016. Those are both attacks on Ukraine's power supply system. Their transformer-based units, their substations, the power lines that go in between, the interconnected control systems that control voltage between substations and base stations. So they basically flip the switch on the lights. So like that's how far the envelope can get pushed. And when we start talking about things like how it applies to the UAP topic at all, when we're talking about in 2020 where there was the Solarwinds hack, basically an IT company that does services and products for every single government organization, the 5 branches, the military, the research labs, Los Alamos, XYZ, Lockheed, Bay, they're all on the list of customers. And they use this company as like their primary trusted provider of IT solutions. They got hacked and their products got hacked by the SVR and the Chinese security services. And they got backdoored. So basically they got access just like the company did. The envelope gets pushed even more and more every year that we see this. We have ransomware taking down pipelines. We have ransomware taking down food supply companies now, right? Both Russia and China, what do they have in common? They've been putting a ton of money into their offensive capabilities, but their defensive capabilities are even better than ours because they can do stuff like they have a firewall that blocks internet traffic around their entire countries. They can cut off from the world's internet at any given point and be like, we're good. We're living. We have everything that we need to do our own internet, isolated from everyone else.
Can they?
From my understanding, yes, no, they can. And they have the
so we don't have anybody
that
that can hack through that, but they can hack into all of us.
That's the best thing about
So we're the losers then. We're the idiots
in cyberspace.
And,
well,
you know, we
what are you
can't-
going to do? Are you going to have the NSA manage a firewall around the entire United States and all of a sudden
Yes.
dictate to every United States company what they can and can't access overseas? Because that's what they're doing.
Yes.
That's what the Great Firewall is, and like that comes into our fundamental
you say-
privacy
hold on,
as,
one second.
as United States citizens.
1 second,
I'm
Jazz. You
surprised to hear
say
Jazz
yes.
say yes.
Wait, hold on. I'm surprised to hear Jazz say yes too, because this is an ultimate infringement upon the libertarian rights of these companies in the United States. So for you to say yes means that you're moving far away from your libertarian roots.
It's not libertarian roots. I'm just saying NP is telling us, well, there are other countries that have the ability to crack down a wall and we have no ability to get through it. So have we made the choice to say, oh, we're just going to be open to criminals and people attacking us and wiping us out, or in a state of national emergency?
Well,
It's
isn't that
hard to
because
implement
We
the wall,
have
so
the
I agree with
ability to
Jazz.
turn
So we
around
won't do
and
it.
do the same thing.
I agree with
And
Jazz
say-
100%.
Shut them out.
It's
it also
where we
limits
should be.
your
The wall, so
public
we
from
take it off the
access to
bottom.
information,
Right.
and that's what we don't
It
want.
can be.
Exactly.
But that's the thing. It's a thing, Kristen. The functionality, the ability to do this stuff, right? Like, if we handed that over to the government and said, look, this is necessary to protect us in the 21st century, and I think capabilities at the country level to do stuff like that 100% is, because then you're leveraging signal intelligence, you're leveraging the NSA, you're leveraging, you know, TAO and foreign operations access capabilities of our government to say, hey, look, we're not going to tell you how this thing is bad, but it's bad, and we're going to block it before you get hacked. Because right now it's not happening, and we're getting screwed
Right.
on a day-to-day basis, and our oil pipelines are getting switched on and off. I'm so surprised our internet still has functionality. I'm surprised our electrical systems have functionality.
I'm shocked
It's a
our
miracle.
power grid hasn't gone
It's a
down
miracle.
entirely.
It's a miracle. It
Yeah,
really
I
is.
agree. But I'm still surprised that the receptionist at the doctor's office hasn't stolen my social security number to give to her meth head boyfriend. So, you know.
How do you know? How do you know, Kristen?
In time, it will happen.
You're
Oh, you're
Lou, you're
muted.
muted, bro.
Muted.
Muted. Sorry, I think it just goes to the types of governments that these firewalls belong to. You know, China has got the ability to say, nope, fuck that, everything's getting shut down. Don't care about you, Nike. Don't care about you, Apple. Don't care about your rights. We're shutting this down because we know we're getting hacked from the outside, and it's the United States, and we refuse to get. You know, it doesn't matter the cost. Whereas in the United
And the least.
States, it's like, well, you know, first of all, it would have to go through like a whole voting system. It would have to go through all of these channels and red tape. And by that
And the
time,
circus and the
it's
monkeys.
already over. It's
And
over.
And Lou, you're also
I'll-
talking about physical equipment,
Yeah.
right? So the way China does this is they route all of the traffic through a couple of tight pipes that they can control.
Right.
Whereas in the U.S., we
Wow.
would never stand for that, right?
let me
Our
Right.
companies
tell you
would
guys-
throw a fit.
Let me tell you guys how this shit really happens. When you hear about these hacks, right? It's not like some dude in China is directly logging in,
Right.
right? It's not like you see it. Oh my God, someone logged in from China. Block, right? What happens is they leverage the companies
Oh wait,
over
somebody
here
from
already.
China just logged in. Hang on.
So what they'll do is, like, we have companies over here called virtual hosting providers. Basically, it's a bunch of computers in a data center somewhere, and you could basically rent out a computer. That's what they do. They steal credit card information. They log into computers over here, and they say, all right, well, you're blocking all logins from China. I'm going to log in from the US.
Right.
Done. So it's like it's like so 15-dimensional chess with, if you're not
And
at the
that's the- okay.
fundamental level doing the
But
Don't
blocking.
forget to come back around. to
Yeah,
that
we got to
question.
come. We're
You'd
going
have
to come
cut
back
off
to.
all the
Yeah.
traffic.
We're gonna come back to Neurostream's question, but I just wanted to say quickly, and I think this bears repeating, that if we lock down in this sort of way that China is locking down, just be aware that you're asking for authoritarian abilities. You're giving your rights away. Companies are giving their rights away to the government. That's why, Jazz, and no offense, but that's why I was so surprised that you said that, because I never thought you'd say that.
No, my argument isn't that we should be cut off from other information. My argument is that the technology has gotten away from us.
Yes.
The genie is out of the
Yes.
bottle. This
And
is the thing with Mickey Mouse with the broom, and he's dancing around, and the genie's already
Nice.
out.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
and
I'll-
at this point,
Yeah.
we go back to what I tried to ask NP before. Being a Luddite, have we already unleashed a monster that we cannot control,
Right,
and
and that's-
could eventually bring us down?
Which
Yeah,
is why
we-
NP is so depressed. Go ahead, NP. Before
No,
we get to
and-
NeuroStream's question, go ahead.
Like I was talking about with Kristen before, we, the same functionality that can protect us can destroy us, right? So I think that we need to be leveraging our signals intelligence. I think we need to be leveraging those classified intelligence gathering programs, that the data on ICE about foreign intercepts, whatever it is that's going to protect us, right? I think we need some fundamental protections from the government on inbound network connections to the United States, but it needs to be open to the public. We need to know how they're controlling our access to data, because the same tools to protect, like I know this from working internally at companies all the time. I can block categories of content. I can block specific political content. I could block malicious content only. We need to know what they're doing. We don't need to know the reasoning in the back end on the intelligence gathering and stuff like that. But like, come on, it's getting to that point where the genie is out of the bottle, Jazz. It is.
Right.
It's getting out. And once you start incorporating these hacking techniques with AI technology that these companies are getting year after year for hacking us and making money and hacking us and putting it back into R&D, it's going to get to the point where we don't have the capabilities to defend ourselves. And like, we need to get ahead of this.
I'm
Wow.
gonna bow out of this shortly because I have to, and I've been flagged. But before I do, just to NP, and I really appreciate that commentary and the things you just said, and it gives me a lot to think about. But I will say, as a layman, I fundamentally disagree with the one thing you're saying. You're saying, oh, well, I can block this and I can block that. Well, when we lived in a time when the greatest technology was somebody with a spear, and if you saw somebody coming down the dirt road, you maybe could go stab them. That's one level. You can block this, you can block that. NP, isn't there a chance there's somebody a little smarter than you somewhere else who could, if you're doing the blocking, they could go, sorry, MP, I got a better spear, and they could just
100%.
go, fuck you, pal, and they're in anyway. I'm just saying the horse might be out of the barn.
No, 100%. And like, that's the best part about cybersecurity is you always learn about, like, I tell you, I at my old job, I worked from probably mid-December all the way through till May, like nonstop, every single day, weekends, holidays, boom, 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 because there were so many hacks coming out that were cutting edge and new hacks that no one could defend against. That's called a 0 day in our field. You had 0 days to prepare against this thing because no one knew about it. So that's the best part about my field is every day I wake up and it could be something brand new that no one could have been prepared against, and everyone got fucked. Because that happens every single day. It's the best part.
Well, now I
day,
feel better.
every day you get a new paycheck,
Yeah, it's
That's
the
good
best.
too.
Jazz, so I agree with you. It is. No, there's always the smarter cat in the room. We just have to, we have to try to operate on that level. Yeah, we have to try to operate that level where we're accounting for all possibilities. But even when we do, that's why we need to share knowledge. That's why we need to get these resources from government, that they have technologies and collection capabilities that none of us could dream about. We need that. Like, we can't defend ourselves against this shit by ourselves.
Right.
Even in a private capacity. It's no way.
I got to dodge out, guys. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Jazz.
This is my third show this week, and we got 2 more things we got to do before I can go to bed. So really appreciate the chat, and this has been fascinating and frightening at the same time. But
Right.
I hope everybody listens, supports the channel, and come up with questions. Feed them back to everybody here, and we can always discuss this again in the future.
Love it.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
so much,
Jazz.
Jazz. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, last question. I think
Neurostream.
we've got NeuroStream's question, and I think that we have one more question from Lou, and then we're going to wrap this up, guys. And we're going to have MP back. Don't worry. Nobody worry. All right, so MP, Solarwinds suggested to me that closed source software is not safer than open source, no protection by obfuscation, where OSS has wider rapid attention given from global stakeholders to own the hardening. Thoughts? Cool show today, folks.
Yeah, man, Neurostream, that's a great, fantastic question. And if you actually look at the history of Solarwinds, you'll find some funny content here. The stakeholders or the executive suite within Solarwinds, the money makers, the decision callers, the shot callers, right? In the past 5 years, they actually were quoted saying that we don't believe in open source software. And for those who don't know, the question here is open source software more secure than private closed source software? And what that means
So
is open source software,
Linux versus iOS.
Well, let's take it more fundamental. Open
Okay.
source software means that the code, the actual lines of programming language behind this product are publicly accessible.
Right.
Anyone on
Anyone
Earth
can
can
see
read
'em.
this shit, right?
Right.
Anyone on Earth can poke a hole and say, this is bad, we're going to put in a comment to fix this, right? It's public. It has its close off, right?
It's its own police.
Flashing
It
you.
polices itself.
Yeah. So basically anyone on Earth can see what's behind the gears, if you will.
Right.
Closed access software is stuff that companies develop that's proprietary.
Right.
And there's licensing. And it's internal and it's critical, right? No one can see this stuff because it makes us money. And with that involves security flaws because no one else on Earth could poke a hole in it. And whatever you put into poking holes is all you're going to get out.
Right.
So when you ship that thing, that money maker, whatever, it can make you a lot of money, but it could also be like Swiss cheese. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my approach is open source software, everything. I mean, Microsoft takes this approach too, where their fundamental approach to security is you don't do things like security through obscurity, where it's like, no one can see our code, so we can't get hacked. Rather, they assume if their code got released to the public, that shouldn't cause a security risk because we develop our code in a safe way.
Right.
That's a
Now, every
secure way to
program is a-
approach code.
Right.
Every program is actually a combination of both of those things, both private and public code. What Google has done is we take advantage of the public code for anything that is security related, right? So there are standard libraries for doing security things, and we use those libraries for our secure stuff. Our private code only comes in when it comes to developing the code that is like user interface code, where it's not really useful for somebody to hack that, or there's, it's what instead you're better off hacking iOS than hacking our user interface code, for example. But every program out there uses some small amount of open source code, even if it's indirect through the operating system.
Now, Aaron, here's the nightmare that comes into my mind. So, like Aaron just said, at some level, most production enterprise quality products in terms of software today use open source libraries and public things that any one of us can access, right? What happens when one of those gets hacked and all of a sudden, Khalib over in Ohio, who was developing this product, this software package that everyone was using, and it was a functionality thing, no one thought about it. What happens when his account gets hacked and his computer gets malware, and all of a sudden someone enters a one-liner that compromises everyone else who uses his code on Earth? That's a supply chain hack, and that's
That actually happened to Apple
state of hacking.
with their Xcode development system.
Yeah.
They were not signing the code that they were sending out to developers to use to write programs with. Somebody was making a copy and they would store it on a local server because it's a huge amount of software. It takes forever to copy. Somebody hacked the copy and they inserted something into this. So every time somebody used Apple's development system to write a new program, it also installed malware into that new program that they wrote.
That's how 15-dimensional chess everything is.
Right.
It's like your dependencies on your dependencies can get hacked, and then you get hacked.
Well, that's
Like,
why I was
that's-
asking, like, man, at what point do we just put it out on the open and open source everything? Like it's almost
Even then,
like the ending.
even then.
It's almost like the ending of Arrival. To me, that movie is all about.
Did you
really
just
how
watch
to make-
Arrival again? Did you just watch it?
No, I didn't.
I only say that because you were teasing me the other day because I keep bringing up that movie. You're like, I'm gonna have to go watch that
When I
again.
think of the Arrival, I always also think of this other '90s movie with Charlie Sheen.
Okay, so you're talking about a different movie. You're not talking about Arrival.
Totally different movie. That's what I thought
Okay.
you were talking about earlier. But
Charlie
you're talking about the
Sheen.
Amy Adams movie, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
Arrival's
okay.
about aliens with the symbols.
Correct.
And they're trying to
Yes.
language.
So,
Yeah.
so at the end of that movie, to me, that movie is not about deciphering the aliens and what they're trying to say. That movie is
it's a love
telling
story.
me it's a love story. And the movie's telling me that how to achieve world peace, and it's as simple as if the United States took all of their secrets and just said, "There you go, China. Here you go, Russia. Here you go, India. This is how to do the nuclear bomb. This is how to do all of our planes. This is all of our technology. Go for it." But, the second we see you doing anything that we think is nefarious with it, that's it. The agreement's over. But it's almost like having to trust your enemy to you got to show all of
Do
your
the
cards
right
before they
thing.
trust you.
Can I just interject right there?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, look, it's a movie plot.
I
Let's just
haven't.
be
No,
clear.
hold on. So I've been on for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I haven't said one single thing about UAPs.
Yeah.
Right? Weird, right?
Well, my
So-
last question was a UAP question, so.
So here's the thing. So you just brought up an interesting point about, at what point do we get to where we can have world peace, right?
Yeah.
And the fundamental issue there is, you said, all right, the U.S. puts everything out there, but then the question that comes up is, all right, well, everyone else has to put everything out there. How do you trust?
Right.
How do you trust, right? Like, what is trust? And
Right.
in security, as I've understand and learned through college and the application and the cloud space and all these things, like, there's concepts of identity, and how do you trust that when someone logs in, like, they are who they say they are, right? Like, what is trust? What is trust at the end of the day? That's why we have things like two-factor authentication, and like, you need a password and something you have, right?
Yeah.
We need a trust, right?
Right.
So with the whole UAP thing, like, my whole thought process, like, I've had my own experiences. Like, I literally saw craft the other day at my window. I had experiences when I was growing up with UAP, but if we apply the concept that UAP are fundamentally ET, and they are anywhere between 1,000 or a couple hundred and 1,000,000 years older than us, they're visiting here. We have things like Neuralink today that are being demoed to basically read our brains with wires plugged into them. It's almost as if we were on the Ethernet of.
Sorry, it's your cat.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Cat got
It's almost as if
catnip.
we're, in terms of consciousness, this is the way I think of it. We're doing things like Neuralink, which is plugging physical wires into our brains to read what they want to do. That's like the Ethernet of computers. All right, what's the next step of that? It's Wi-Fi. I guarantee you, if ET is real, they have the Wi-Fi capabilities to read consciousness and thoughts, right?
Mhm.
That's where I go with that. So,
Yeah.
Andrew, I don't have enough time. I have a full-time job.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, shut up, Andrew. We're gonna have MP on as much as we want. Shut your face. You can't have him either.
Yeah. No, you should probably actually go on Andrew's show.
I'm just kidding. You should definitely go on Andrew's show. Andrew's amazing.
Well, okay, so this is the last question of the night, and if you can answer it as the cat is absolutely bonkers. You got
She's
into the
like
catnip.
having a big time.
Oliver got into the catnip.
Did she bite you?
No. Something like that. Yeah, no, she swatted at me.
Oh, that's funny.
Sorry, what was
okay.
the next question?
So this is the last question, and if you can answer it in a minute or two. Harvard or Sunila asked this question like 4 or 5 times. So the question is, Gary McKinnon hacked into the USG looking for UFO information. Could a talented hacker break into the USG systems today, or is it just too difficult now?
Sorry, my cat's scaring me. What was the name of the questionnaire?
Harvard or Sunila.
Harvinder, that's a great, fantastic question. And I'll give you an example of a previous hack and how it would apply to today. So when we're talking about these interconnected systems, right? When we talk about classified systems, and I have zero experience in person on this, right? I didn't work on classified systems. That was not my role. I don't have any TSS top secret compartmentalized. I got friends who work in research agencies and stuff that I graduated college with, my best buds. They do that stuff. I don't. Notice.
Okay.
So how I would secure those systems, and from my understanding on research of those systems. So there's something called an air gap in security. And what that means is it's a interconnected network of computers that is not connected to anything else. So whatever you need those computers to do, that's top secret, XYZ, QXY clearance, right? It's on there. And there are physical and operational controls to make sure that no one can access that no matter what. And there are public research documents out there on how to breach an air gap system, right? You could drop USB sticks around the parking lot. You can reprogram a Wi-Fi card to read the electromagnetic frequency of a processor and place it nearby an air gap system and read the processing information that's going on in that system. You can go that crazy. Yeah. Mossad did that. Yeah, there's some crazy stuff you can do. You can cold boot attack stuff where if you get physical access to an air gap system, you can throw it on dry ice and then use an electromagnetic frequency reader to basically pick up the encryption keys off of that processor before the system powers off, if you have physical access. So there's all different methodologies to attack these air gap systems and get information out. A famous attack that breached an air gap system was the Natanz Stuxnet attack. This was the US government and Israeli intelligence Mossad cyber capabilities that made a malware. They dropped it via USB stick, or they got a contractor to plug it into the power plant network or whatever it was. And basically this is a nuclear enrichment center, and this piece of malware in Iran, in the Natanz. And basically this piece of malware, it only ran when it was on the specific network that had the specific Siemens industrial controller to enrich uranium and spin uranium at a certain frequency in a centrifuge, and it just changed that number a little bit to make it wobble. And it sent information back to the control systems that the people were looking at that everything is fine. Everything is fine. And it just broke a bunch of centrifuges, right? That breached an air gap system.
Wow.
So when we talk about classified systems today, like in the United States, in terms of RSA and Lockheed and all these crazy defense contractors that would have this R&D research and stuff like that, like they most likely have like 50 physical controls in front of these classified systems. But it's a non-zero chance. It's a non-zero chance is what I'm trying to say with the whole Solarwinds thing, which basically Russia and China had simultaneous access to basically all of our computer networks for 6 to 8 months without us knowing. Before FireEye picked it up. Right. There's a chance that they figured out how to breach that air gap.
Like, and what you just said, like what you just said real quick, like, I don't think most people know that. Like what you just said about how China and Russia breached our systems and had access to extraordinary amounts of information for 6 to 8 months before we even realized it.
Yeah. So that was the SolarWinds hack, and that'll be in the show notes.
We got to come back and talk about SolarWinds another time.
Well, we'll have a whole episode about that. But basically, there was unfettered access to every single government private network, DOE, the Pentagon, all 5 branches of the military, all the research laboratories, Microsoft, Cisco. There was 18. So out of 33,000 customers, which a customer in this case is not like you or me. It's like Cisco, Citibank, XYZ on the stock market. It's
New Zealand.
It's companies. Well, no, it's
Okay.
corporations. It's corporations or private companies or private organizations like the Pentagon and the NSA and Schoolcraft dropping $69 donations.
Killing it in today's chat.
Thank you, Schoolcraft. Thank you, Schoolcraft.
Thank you, Schoolcraft. But yeah, so it's like it's big companies. So like there were out of the 33,000 that got hacked this way, which basically the most sensitive thing that you could use in the company got hacked. So it was just full fettered access. Yeah, it was 18,000 companies out of that, which it was literally the entire U.S. government, foreign governments as well.
Wow.
I mean, and
these are not the air gap systems, though. The air gap systems, UFO, Stuxnet, all of that stuff, that's all air gapped, and there's no. I mean,
we don't know. We don't know.
Right. It's possible they could get into it. I think it's very unlikely. You know, they don't have USB ports on.
But here's the thing. And Aaron, I'll tell you this. So this malware was so sophisticated that took over SolarWinds, where number one, they basically hijacked the update. So you know when you update Windows, right, and it fixes a bunch of things in the background, they hijacked that of this product and they legit got it signed with a digital encryption certificate that it was from SolarWinds, right? So for all intents and purposes, this was legit, right? So this was so fucking tricky. What it did was when the update was installed, so let's say even if this thing was running in an air-gapped system offline, they need to update that to make sure that they're up to date and secure for the other security patches that this company fixes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
but those
are-
updates are carefully controlled and installed. I've seen
So,
that
yes.
process done before. Everything about that update is vetted before they even put it in there. Like every line of code is vetted before they will let it on.
So it was packed. It was packed and encrypted with a custom algorithm that only ran 6 to 12 days after it was even installed.
Yeah, they would have found that if they tried to.
No,
put that in the
and I'll
spec
tell you
sheet.
why, Aaron. Because if you look into the actual cybersecurity of our classified and unclassified networks, we use something called Einstein. Are you familiar with Einstein?
Yeah, I am.
It only looks for known bad things that were previously seen before. It doesn't do behavioral analysis on processes and how process behavior works, like EDR, like common EDR solution and threat hunting solutions applied in enterprises today.
It also looks
They're not
for
running that.
unidentified data, though. It looks for unidentified and untagged data, and that's.
But
what
are
that
you actually
would have been.
reviewing those alerts, and are you reviewing it in a way?
Well,
and
yeah,
not
that's the
hold
human
on.
thing,
So here's the
right?
thing. Here's the thing. So
Yeah.
when how does it look on the human end of this? All right, we just applied this update to SolarWinds. Yeah, no, we just applied this update, and the legitimate signed SolarWinds file is reaching out to it looks legitimate URL. It's like a base64 encoded URL. It all looks normal. It's normal. It's actually communicating with the same. If you look at the network intrusion detection system, it's communicating via the same exact protocol that the legitimate SolarWinds DLL was using to communicate with SolarWinds servers. So actually, if you were doing behavioral analysis of the decrypted traffic via SSL decrypt, it would actually look legit.
There's no traffic between the air-gapped system and the internet.
But that's the thing. For updates, it does need to validate for SolarWinds
Yeah, and what I'm saying is they
products. So you
review
do
every line of code.
at one point you do need to connect it to validate the update for the SolarWinds product. Those air-gapped systems at some point need to have whitelisted traffic outbound just for SolarWinds. So the way that works is they'll use NSGs, network security rules, firewall rules to literally outbound only outbound traffic.
Mhm.
And they code that logic into the malware to make it look like it's legit. And then the malware self-propagates and communicates over that outbound protocol. There's never an inbound connection. Everything's pre-programmed. So they hack.
Sick
they
burn,
hack
Nick.
They hack air-gapped systems. It's nuts. No, like I agree. That's the thing, though. Everything that you can think about, you need to connect at one point to do the update. And they basically reverse engineered the protocol of SolarWinds, how it talks to the home servers legitimately, and then just said, all right, that's our C2 framework. That's our command and control framework now. We're going to make it look exactly the same thing as the legitimate traffic that needs to be whitelisted for the air-gapped system.
Wow.
It's messed up. It's messed up. Trust dependencies on trust dependencies allows this stuff. It's nuts.
Matt
That's why
Moreau,
I give
thank
credit,
you so
I give
much.
credit to Google. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, Aaron, God bless you, Aaron. He's doing everything in his power not to pull back from what you're depressing us with. But I mean, you keep coming back. You keep coming back and be like, well, yeah, but did you think of this? And Aaron's like, yeah.
no, and it's appropriate though,
in
because
the end, he's
Yeah.
right. You know, it's a cat and mouse game. We're going to go back and forth. We're going to develop something. They're going to break it. We're going to develop
Right.
something to counter that. They'll break that. It's just
It almost
gonna go on
sounds
forever.
like
Yeah.
it almost sounds like dealing with the mob. First, it was breaking into trucks at the airport, and then they caught on to that. Then it was the lottery, Then it was strip clubs. Then it was this, It's like it's
It was the
always
McDonald's
developing one
Monopoly
step
game.
ahead.
Yeah, and like that's the thing though. I actually give Google a lot of credit. There's a lot of memes out there where it's like when you sign into Google from a new device, and it's like 5 guys break in with like the SWAT team, and they're like, "Is this you? Is this you?" It's like
No,
Google's
seriously.
actually really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their user behavior analytics on the back end in terms of their AI and how they detect different systems and their default MFA. Like I actually do enjoy Google, and that's why I still use Gmail, even though they collect a bunch of information about me. It's secure.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
don't
like-
do anything with. We don't give that information to anybody else.
Yeah.
Private to Google.
except the United States government. But
Okay, we got to
Only-
give it up
only
to
then
Anna.
by court order.
We
It
gotta
only
give it up
happened
to
once.
Anna. I think we got to give it up to Anna for one of the best chats tonight. In conclusion, if you are a nerd, get nerdy and fix security in our cyberspace so we can merge or just watch cats to each their own. Thank you so much,
absolutely.
Anna.
That's a good out.
What do you think, Lou? We got to wrap this up, my man.
I mean, we're 25 minutes over. We can almost reset. We can almost reset the room.
Thank you. Well, what we need to do is we need to have MP back. We need to have Aaron back to have this conversation. We need to go deeper because there's a lot more to discuss. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. What an amazing show. If you want to follow NP, too bad you can't.
Not on social media. Not on social media.
Good
Sorry.
luck.
Good luck
Good luck.
finding them. Unless of course
You
you're
can
a
find
billionaire
them.
looking for a cybersecurity
Well,
expert.
Yes,
you might
he's
have
your
to
guy.
like get an Instagram for the cat.
Oh, that's how you could do it. But you need and if anybody could figure out how to secure the Instagram for the cat, Nick, it's got to be you. It's got to be you, babe.
Well, and also your cat's already microchipped. You might as well do it.
See, the microchip's just Bluetooth, so you need to physically scan
Yeah.
her. But even then, it's not registered to me because she's a rescue. But in terms of the Instagram, I don't want to get a burner phone for the Instagram for the cat, so
Yeah,
I'll just enjoy her. It's okay. She's like my
We'll
roommate.
save our Instagram moments for the Singularity Lab and Unidentified Celebrity Review.
Yep. Well, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
I've had
What a
blast.
pleasure. Thank you so much, MP.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Aaron, thank you so much. What an amazing show. Thank you guys very much. And we're just gonna be out. Congratulations on an amazing show, NP. You're the man, and everybody absolutely adores you. And you created a lot of super chats for us tonight. Thank you very much.
Yeah, even more than
No,
Mike
and
taking shots.
Yeah, and
Well,
congrats,
not more.
congrats on getting 1,000.
but pretty damn good.
Congrats on getting 1,000 subscriptions and getting funded finally. That's awesome. Looking forward to
Thank
it.
you, brother. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a great night, everybody.
Peace.
Yep.